I now reconvene the general session. As I mentioned yesterday, commission members who participate remotely will need to disclose if any other individual 18 years of age or older present in the room at the remote location and the general nature of the member's relationship with any such individuals. Are there any disclosures from members attending via Zoom? Nerlit?
No disclosures, thank you.
As a reminder, commissioners who are participating via Zoom must be visible at all times on camera. Please log off Zoom if you need to leave the meeting and log in when you are ready to join the meeting. If you experience broadband or internet connectivity problems while participating in the meeting, that would be remedied by joining without video. You must announce the reason for your non-appearance when you turn off the camera. We'll now take roll call. Recording Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Lynette Brown. Here. Catherine Williams Brown. Here. Jose Cardenas. Gerald Cotton. Juan Cruz. Christopher Davis.
Present.
Michael De La Torre.
Present.
Deborah Erickson. Present. Anna Marie Francois.
Present.
Makita Gwynno Shire.
Present.
Bonnie Clark.
Present.
Ira Dick.
Present.
Mencius.
Present.
Monica Martinez. Shireen Pavri.
Present.
David Simmons. Fang Yuzoff. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. As a reminder, use your teacher voice again today, please. Before I recess the general session, I'd like to turn it over to Executive Director Sandy, who has an announcement for us.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It is a great pleasure to announce that Governor Newsom yesterday appointed Dr. Juliette Wallleitner to be the new director of our Division of Data, Research, Evaluation, and Assessment. I'm just going to share a little bit about what that new division is, and I'll give you again a little bit of Juliette's background. This new division of Data, Research, Evaluation, and Assessment, which we're calling DREA, Dr. Drea down here, will have three focal areas. The first area is data collection and analysis, which will oversee the collection and analysis of data to support the work of the commission. This work includes developing a dashboard to view teaching performance assessment results, including overall and first-time pass rates, both across a state and by institution, developing a multiple measures report that will provide data on key measures of program effectiveness that can be used to support continuous improvement efforts and improving pipeline and workforce tracking of candidates. The second area, research and development, will guide the research efforts of the Commission to support educator preparation and engage in the development of new programs and approaches to improve educator preparation. Initially, that will include revising the subject matter proficiency requirements, supporting the implementation of Senate Bill 1263, and developing the registered apprenticeship pathway. The third area, assessment, will oversee and administer all assessments and exams utilized by the Commission to evaluate educator preparedness. This group will also lead the development of new assessments and exams when appropriate. So that is a new division that, with the appointment of Dr. Wallleitner, is born. So Juliette Michelson Wallleitner has been a special consultant in the Office of Policy and Continuous Improvement at the Commission since February of this year. During those 5 months, she took over leadership of the RDI TPA Workgroup and has been supporting the performance assessment team. Prior to joining the commission, Juliette was at Fresno State for 9.5 years, where she was an associate professor of literacy, education, and served as the director of educator preparation and accreditation. Juliette holds a PhD in education with an emphasis in language, literacy, and culture, and a designated emphasis in writing, rhetoric, and composition from UC Davis. While in graduate school, she worked on research and evaluation projects focused on pre-service and in-service teacher development. She also brings experience with accreditation, having overseen CTC accreditations at both UC Davis and Fresno State and the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation Accreditation this is the new AQEP accrediting body nationally at Fresno State. So Juliet also has a long history of involvement with the California Writing Project, including most recently directing the San Joaquin Valley Writing Project at Fresno State and serving on the California Writing Project executive team. Juliet began her career as a high school English and journalism teacher at Tokay High School in Lodi. In her final year with Lodi Unified, she served as a secondary instructional coach. I just can't say how glad we are to bring Juliet into our community, our leadership team here, to help us with the enormous amount of work we've just approved. And going forward, we've got a lot to do. So welcome, Juliet, and thank you.
Excited to be here.
Thank you.
Of course. Wonderful news. I now recess the general session and move to the Educator Preparation Committee. Commissioner Cardenas, will you please reconvene the committee?
Yes, I would like to reconvene the Educator Preparation Committee. We have 2 items today. And good morning, everybody. Before we get started, I know we want to try to get into closed session, I think by 10:45 if possible. And so I just wanted to put that out there as we go through today's items. Again, good morning all. Thank you for being here. Our first item today is item 3F, the final recommendations of the work group to the review, the design and implementation of the teaching performance assessments and updates on the approved interim action. This item is being presented by Adam Ebrahim and Juliet Waltleiner and Mandy Redfern and Ursula Estrada Reveles, co-chairs of the RDI TPA work group. This is an information action item. Dr. Waltleiner, will you please begin?
Good morning, commissioners. It's great to be here with you today. I'm excited to be able to share with you the final recommendations of the RDI TPA. As you know, this is the culmination of a short period of very intense work for the work group members, which began late last September with the first work group meeting, and for them wraps up with this presentation today. I am joined in this presentation by our work group co-trainers, Dr. Mandy Redfern, and then Dr. Ursula Estrada Reveles, who's joining us via Zoom from the California Latino Superintendents and Administrators Conference in Oceanside. And just a note, she is scheduled to give a presentation at 10, so she will be leaving us at 9:45. So with that,
Also, just want to let you all know the internet here is very spotty. It keeps dropping off. So if for some reason I disappear, I will pass the baton to Mandy.
Thank you, Ursula. So I want to begin by giving you an overview of the structure of this item. This is an information and action item. And so part 1 is actually the action part. And in this first part, we'll be presenting the final recommendations of the work group for your acceptance and adoption as the foundation of an implementation plan or the development of an implementation plan. And then part 2 will be presenting updates on the interim actions that you all approved in February for your feedback. And so here's just a graphic to help you see, again, what the action is, what the information piece is. So again, just a reminder of what the purpose of the RDI TPA work group was. It was to evaluate the design and implementation of the current teaching performance assessments, to ensure that the assessments are valid, authentic, formative in nature, embedded in preparation, suitable for beginning teachers, and they contribute to program improvement through the accreditation system. So you have seen this graphic before, and you've watched that gold colored box march along the screen. And so we're really excited that it is now on the far right, and that we have these final recommendations for you. And so again, these recommendations are here, or that we're presenting to you, are intended to provide guidance for that development of the implementation plan. And then just a reminder on the development process. It was very much iterative in nature. As a reminder, throughout the process, including with the final recommendations, work group members have been polled to indicate their level of agreement with each recommendation. And again, within the actual item, we included the results of that final poll. Additionally, we did something this time that we have not done in the past. Throughout, workgroup members were provided opportunities to provide additional comments to elaborate on how they responded to the poll. And so just to give you kind of a sense of the voices of workgroup members, we included selections of those comments in the agenda item. And you can see those. And then as a reminder, the focus areas, there are 5 modifications needed to the current assessments, how programs might embed the assessments, how we might strengthen the accreditation system to ensure programs are embedding the assessment, how programs can engage in local scoring of the assessment to inform their own program improvement, and then items for program completer surveys so that we can better understand the candidate experience of what kind of support they received. So at this point, I will turn it over to co-chairs, Dr. Beckman and Estrada-Ravelas.
Thank you. Dr. Estrada-Ravelas and I are very honored to be here today to share the final recommendations and the outcome of the hard work of the entire workgroup committee. Before we begin, I just want to thank publicly the members of the workgroup who worked tirelessly to improve the TPA experience for candidates. And I also want to thank the staff who were incredible throughout this effort. It was essential to the workgroup to bring changes here today that focus on improving the credentialing process for the candidate. So everything we're bringing to you is centered on improving that process for the candidate today and making sure that they are ready to support California's students. So just again, there are kind of going to be 3 steps today. We're recommending that first you receive the recommendations from the work group. And then second, we're recommending that you adopt the work group's recommendations, which will be the foundation of the development of an implementation plan by staff. And in doing so, then we're also recommending that you direct staff to develop that implementation plan based on the recommendations. So just to clarify, if you choose to adopt the recommendations as written will then form the foundation for the implementation plan, and then that will be brought back to you here in August. Okay. All right, so you will notice there are 24 recommendations we're bringing to you today on behalf of the work group. We'd like to highlight that there is a high level of support ranging from 71% to 96% on each one of these 24 recommendations. And although this is significant support, some individual recommendations do include dissent, and we want to be transparent about that. The workgroup members' comments are listed in the item so that you can see the specific support and/or concerns from workgroup members. And Dr. Estrada-Ravelas is going to review focus area 1.
Thank you so much, Mandy. So you all have the agenda item with all of the wonderful details included there. But just to provide a reminder, focus area 1, which pertains to modifications to assessments, the work group recommends that we center culturally responsive pedagogy, also that we streamline the assessment structure, that we improve the candidate feedback mechanisms, ensuring maximum flexibility while ensuring financial accessibility for all candidates across the state of California.
And the second focus area asks the work group to consider how we can ensure that the TPA is embedded into credential programs, but also that it avoids duplicative work for candidates. So in this area, we're bringing 4 recommendations today. The first would be a change to the Performance Assessment Design Standard 1G to require model sponsors to expand support materials provided to programs. One example is asking model sponsors to provide examples of passing and not passing submissions. And then the second change being recommended is to revise Program Standard 5 to include a requirement that programs provide an orientation on the adopted TPA model for all individuals, everyone who supports the candidate, not just the candidate themselves. And then the third change is asking the CTC to expand the support that it provides for educator preparation programs by increasing the resources available and hosting statewide meetings or gatherings to share best practices. And then the final recommendation is that the CTC expand the continuum of practice that has already been initiated and to ensure that it includes pre-service all the way through in-service in an effort to align all of the pre-service training and assessments. Ursula, focus area 3.
Yes, there we go. Focus area 3 pertains to the accreditation support for embedding. So
Foster.
Focus area is actually looking at the accreditation and how we can support to ensure that it's embedded in coursework. So finding ways to make sure that there is a process that helps programs actually embed the assessment both in their coursework, but also potentially in their clinical practice. And then this area of recommendations specifically asks for individualized feedback. We've heard that from candidates over and over throughout the last year, that they get their results, but they don't really know what to do with it. And so these recommendations are asking for an expansion of that feedback so that they know how to use that feedback to go back and improve their practice, which is the goal to support their development and then eventually their teaching with the students in California. And then also this section is asking us to use the TPA data to actually lead to program improvement. And so finding ways to hold programs accountable for using that data and then implementing it to make positive changes for the candidates themselves. And then focus area 4 is local scoring. The work group considered how programs can use local scoring to inform program improvement. And we developed 2 recommendations in this area. The first recommendation asks that program standard 5 be revised to specify that programs must implement a local scoring system for the TPA, and that this system would be reviewed during the next accreditation review. So there's some accountability there. While the work group did not reach consensus on how local scoring should be implemented, they did agree that local scoring should include collaboration, calibration, scoring of common submissions, and adherence to established inter-rater reliability standards. And then the second recommendation was that additional costs related to the changes to the assessment and or costs associated with local scoring should not be passed on to the candidate. I'm going to jump in on focus area 5 as well. This is just one recommendation, and it's asking that the completer survey be revised to address the 5 components that the work group was addressing, just to monitor progress towards all of the goals that we initiated here. And that it's embedded in all. Yes. And then the final one is something that came out of the work group conversations, which was not part of the charge, but there were concerns related to how AI is going to impact TPA. And so during that discussion, what we discovered is that we probably need a work group to actually just focus on this one particular area. And so we're recommending today that the CTC lead a work group to study the impact of artificial intelligence on the TPA, and then to make a recommendation back to the commission on what should be done regarding. So again, I just want to thank you, commissioners, for trusting the members of the work group to engage in this important work and allowing us to bring our final recommendations to you today. And thank you again to commission staff for all that you did to support us through this process.
Redfern and Dr. Estrada Rovelis, so I think she's with us. Just a reminder of those recommended actions on that first part of the presentation. We're recommending that the commission receive the work group recommendations, adopt the work group recommendations as the foundation for implementation plan development, then directing staff to develop that implementation plan based on the recommendations that we would bring back to you in August. With that, I'm going to move into the information part of this item, which is updates on the interim actions approved in February for commission feedback. So the first, this is just a list of the interim actions. I'm not going to read through them. I'll just talk about them as I go through what's the progress. So the first interim action was to update the TPAs as necessary to eliminate the use of content-based condition codes. And you heard a lot yesterday about all of the updates to particularly the Cal TPA, though I also want to highlight that as those changes were being discussed and really the performance assessment team was so thoughtful about how to make shifts within the assessment, all of that was also carried into the Cal APA. So the rubrics were revised for the 25-26 versions so that content issues now could be addressed within the rubrics themselves. And then also codes now, condition codes really focus just on those technical issues, and assessors are directed to score what is submitted or what is there rather than finding that condition code and sending it off. Within the Ed TPA, condition codes are still in place, but those predominantly focus on technical issues, as we heard about with the literacy performance assessment field test yesterday. And then FAST does not use condition codes, so did not impact FAST. Interim action 2 was to redirect candidate submissions with technical condition codes back to candidates so they can resolve those issues. The one big change that happened for Cal TPA, Cal APA, and Ed TPA is that condition codes are no longer issued for video edits. And the 25-26 guides for the Cal TPA and Cal APA specifically have been updated to highlight that video edits are allowed if it helps the candidate to get the information needed. And then for Cal TPA and Ed TPA, both systems implemented a voucher system for candidates who received the A2, which was the most commonly issued technical condition code, or who have taken the exam 2+ times and their most recent submission has a condition code. Again, I've brought this up in the past and it's still something we're working on. Both Cal TPA and Ed TPA do not currently have a mechanism in place to easily notify candidates once a submission has been marked to receive a condition code, and that can cause a delay. So that's still definitely on our radar. It's definitely something we want to address. Interim action 3 is around the guidelines for acceptable support. I think it was in April, program sponsor alert 2505 was issued. This was a clarification of what acceptable support looks like in practice. I know just in my own conversations with faculty at different institutions, there's a lot of false information that's circulating. And so we are doing our best to get the word out there. No, you can help your candidates. It's okay. It's not. And so we also are planning sessions for different teacher education conferences this fall that really talk about what does acceptable support look like? What does embedding look like? And then Cal TPA, they've done a digging deeper webinar focused on acceptable support. They have digging deeper sessions scheduled for the fall that are specifically to guide programs in supporting candidates, especially as we have all these shifts in the Cal TPA. Interim action 4 has to do with the commission system for collecting and reporting TPA outcome data. So within the commission, we've convened a data team of staff to develop consistent standards for reporting TPA and APA pass rates and other important metrics that better center the candidate experience, such as condition code prevalence and distribution. Who's getting those? Why are they getting those? What do the first time pass rates look like? What's the average number of attempts it takes a candidate? How many candidates are falling within that secondary passing standard? And then what's the number of candidates who actually start the TPA, but then don't end up completing it and leave the teaching pipeline? Because that's another issue that we need to be looking at. Our data team has also developed a preliminary dashboard to provide assessment data and visualizations. You heard a little bit about that yesterday morning from Executive Director Sandy. That's currently being reviewed internally. We do have plans to take it. The delay here. Okay, Interim Action 5. This is about developing a system of notification for candidates who fall within that secondary passing standard. And I want to say we took some initial steps with that, and then we are kind of shifting a little bit, but I hope that it will make the process more transparent for everyone involved. So our initial step was to revise the letter that was sent to candidates who fall within that secondary passing standard. It goes both to the candidate and to their program simultaneously. We realized that that language really belongs on the commission website. We're working on revised language that provides both candidate-specific information on the secondary passing standard and the next steps that they need to take if they fall within that, as well as program-specific information, again, about the secondary passing standard, about what those secondary passing standard ranges are, and the specific steps that then programs can take. So the plan then going forward will be that when a candidate falls within that secondary passing standard, they will receive that notification that will go to them. It will also, there will again be copies to their programs, but it will direct them to the website for that information. So hoping that that just kind of helps streamline, clarify, that's the hope. And then Interim Action 6 is to issue a notification to all programs identifying their TPA first-time pass rates based on both scorable and non-scorable submissions and providing evidence-based recommendations for strengthening those candidates' reports. So again, the first-time pass rates are now being calculated based on the new reporting standards that we talked about in Interim Action 4. We have plans for notifications to go to programs once the data infrastructure is finalized. The emphasis there will really be on transparency and support with the help or with the goal of sharing out best practices from programs that have high first-time pass rates. You know, why does this program have 90% pass rate and what kind of actions are they taking? And then providing that information to programs with much lower pass rates. So we don't have Interim Action 7 up here, which was just to bring that information back to you, but that's Interim Action 7. So, okay, so that was our information item. So again, back to the actions, receiving those work group recommendations, adopting the recommendations as the foundation for the implementation plan development, directing staff to develop the implementation plan based on the recommendations that we will bring back to you in August. Thank you. Questions or feedback for us?
Thank you very much. We will now open for public comment. There are members of the public that would like to make a comment. Please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or press *9 if participating by phone. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Aaron Gibbons.
Good morning again. My name is Erin Gibbons. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a TPA teacher in Orange County, and I represent California Teachers Association. I want to emphasize one point that CTA made in its letter to the commission. Teacher preparation programs should be held accountable for the number of candidates who do not pass the TPA. While CTA appreciates recommendation 3D to include this information in the accreditation process and recommendation 3G to publicly report programs with low pass rates, these are not enough. TPA pass rates need to be public and accessible. In addition, TPA pass rates by candidate demographic for each teacher preparation program should be made available to the public annually in a report to the providing this information would empower candidates to make informed decisions when choosing programs that align with their needs and increase their likelihood of success. It's an important step to addressing the ongoing teacher shortage. While our ultimate goal remains the elimination of the TPA due to significant barriers increase, we want to recognize the hard work that the RDI TPA work group did to make these reforms. CTA urges the commission to approve the recommendations mentioned in the CTA letter, which also would bring an end to the high stakes nature of the TPA and prevent further harm to the teaching. We hope you consider this because that would help candidates who want to learn from the best accreditation program. Thank you.
Joanne Johnson, please unmute your microphone.
Good morning. My name is Joanne Johnson. I'm a virtual independent study teacher with Glendora Unified in Southern California, an induction support provider and a proud member of the CTA Credentials and Professional Development Committee. For over the past 25 years, I've served as a mentor and master teacher, working closely with candidates, navigating the challenges of teacher preparation and induction. Today, I'm here to address the proposed improvements to the TPA. I fundamentally believe that the TPA has little value in teacher preparation as currently constituted, as it is a high-stakes, time-consuming, and costly barrier that provides little feedback to teacher candidates. However, I strongly believe that the proposed recommendations to improve the TPA will provide a more cohesive, authentic, and supportive experience for candidates. These changes would not only reduce stress, but also foster continuous improvement, resulting in a more accurate reflection of a candidate's teaching competencies. I've seen firsthand how burdensome and disconnected the current TPA process can feel for candidates. By streamlining these requirements, reducing the duplicative tasks, and embedding the components into their course and fieldwork, we will create a better assessment reflecting real-world teaching and allow candidates to focus on what matters, which is building strong, authentic classroom practice. Integrating the TPA into the coursework is the most critical step to truly making a change in this process. When aligned with the TPEs and embedded in what the candidates are already doing, the assessment becomes more authentic, timely to their learning, less stressful, and more meaningful. The locally scored model promotes a natural, reflective development process while offering candidates timely feedback and supports incremental growth. It creates the ability of teacher candidates to work with their mentors, evaluators, and professors to learn and grow in a just-in-time format. It shifts the focus from truly jumping through hoops to developing as an educator. I urge you to adopt these recommendations. Thank you for your time.
All right, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. As a classroom teacher for 38 years, I served as a mentor to many teacher candidates and to new teachers in Irvine USD's induction program. I now supervise candidates in UC Irvine's Master of Arts in Teaching program. I support recommendation 4A, which requires that local teacher educators score candidates' skills. This shifts the purpose of the TPA to supporting candidates, which is what we instructors, mentors, and supervisors do. While demonstrating TPE skills, candidates also have to follow the local site's professional learning community plans for curriculum and learning activities. Local scorers can help adjust the timing of specific tasks throughout the year to ensure candidates successfully meet both PLC and TPA requirements. Evaluation by strangers via video, when those strangers don't know the site, the students, or the curriculum, is extremely stressful. Candidates do record themselves teaching, but supervisors and candidates then observe the recorded lessons together, step by step, with guided self-reflection for growth. For a stranger to watch a recorded lesson without context and then to decide whether a candidate is qualified offers no opportunity for growth, only stress. So local TPP educators are best suited to evaluate a candidate's level of preparedness. If some sort of TPA must be required, it needs to help candidates grow without burdening them financially or emotionally, and it must not interfere with or distract from their focus on their students. Candidates must put their students first. So speaking for mentor teachers and supervisors, I advocate local scoring to support candidates developing strong classroom skills for their future students. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Scott Pearson, unmute your microphone, share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Mishka Pearson, and I'm a teacher in Elk Grove Unified School District. Throughout my teaching career, I have served as a mentor teacher and worked with many teacher candidates. I'm here today on behalf of the California Teachers Association to encourage you to consider a critical component for TPA reform, which is the elimination of the cost for the TPA. The cost for the TPA and TPA resubmission should not fall on the teacher candidate. Candidates have paid for their teacher preparation program and should not incur additional fees to take the TPA. In addition, establishing a loan program for TPA fees would introduce new challenges for teacher candidates, as various factors beyond their control could impact their ability to meet loan forgiveness terms. CTA supports the option within recommendation 1F for the TPA to be free to candidates unconditionally and does not support the options for loans, grants, stipends, or vouchers. I've heard from many teacher candidates who've shared their stories about the financial impact of the TPA. Just this week in meeting with candidates, they have shared that the stress of taking the TPA alone, submitting their lessons, and then receiving feedback is very stressful, especially when they're considering the cost of possible resubmission. They are not getting paid for their student teaching time. They're incurring costs for their education program, in addition to having to pay to live. The additional cost of the TPA is a financial burden for many teacher candidates and just another barrier into the profession. The cost of becoming a teacher in California is expensive, and eliminating the cost for the TPA is one way to ensure more equitable and manageable TPA for all candidates. Thank you for your time today and your commitment to our upcoming educators.
We have no other.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have questions or comments on this item? Mr. Davis.
So I'm not sure if these questions are for now or for August, so forgive me in advance. You know, if we were to vote for affirmatively for what has been presented today. Good morning, by the way, and thank you for the robust work on the committee. The work group, I mean, but I have some questions about focus area 2. Going back, you had mentioned that one of the recommendations would be to have passing models available for candidates, models for maybe portfolios that might pass or might not pass. When I know we spoke of this, I did yesterday about the moving target. If annually there are shifts and changes to this, how might there is every year? The frustration that I have with this particular recommendation is unless you all are producing one there isn't going to be one existing until the first scoring period is over annually. So people would be running, in the dark, so to speak, submitting things and potentially having to pay a second time to certify, right? Because there is no model in existence. And again, with the dubious guides that I know that you spoke of, trying to catch up sometimes with the guides and the new requirements for passing, that's even more frustrating when you think I'm flying in the dark, I don't have adequate instructions, and then the templates don't match what's in the guide, the video tool doesn't match what's in the guide. So I'm hoping all of this stuff gets rolled out simultaneously and not, piecemeal, right? Because that would make it frustrating again, and it wouldn't improve that process. So I'm hoping that's considered with this. Will the templates be available to the public? I know we spoke of that yesterday, but I wanted to make sure that that is mentioned here in the guide that is given to candidates, the Cal APA to Cal TPA. As I mentioned yesterday, I've been working with candidates just on my own, volunteering to help. And I'm like, yeah, this doesn't match with this. I don't know what this is. So I know that I've been emailing folks here at the commission, just trying to get clarity on how things work just for individuals in the field who are frustrated, who want to walk away from the system. So again, admiration, appreciation of the work. I'm just hoping that these kinks get worked out. Oh, and I'll stop because I realize I'm asking questions, but I'm not waiting for responses. So will those models be available right away, or do we have to wait a whole cycle to get those models of?
I think that's a great question. I think that, for these recommendations, what we'd have to do is then, the implementation plan, we would have to then put that inside the assessment design standards.
Sure.
So that then when model sponsors, whether that be the commission staff, whether that be Pearson, whether that be Fresno State, or some other body that wants to develop a TPA, then they would have to discuss or detail how they will ensure that models would be available at the time that guides were released. But that's what this recommendation would be asking us to do, would be to update those standards so that that information is there.
Sure. And then and the back, and hopefully also the consideration would be to add those templates and make them available to the public day one. And
well, and I think that's part of, I forget which recommendation number it is, but ensuring that materials are available for programs, for candidates. So just to kind of make the whole process as transparent as you were asking for yesterday.
And I think that the materials was the word that I want to make sure that that's embedded.
That includes templates, yes.
Right,
yes.
because materials, all the materials are laid out. I could find 8 rubrics for this, that, the other.
Yeah, I understand.
This other stuff, but I can't find them, so.
So I think that's an important point then, so that as that assessment design standard gets revised, being very specific in what is meant by the word resources, because that's a very broad term.
Also something, because I know this was also part of the target this year, the CSTPs, yay. And I appreciate the robust work that was put in place for that, but I understand the new CSTPs are also required for this cycle that is about to expire in July, I guess, and then there's going to be a revision. There was some confusion in the field about the CSTPs and whether we go with the old ones, do we adopt the new ones right away, because we haven't had the CSTPs long enough to have any experience with them to put them into practice. So will that be clarified too? Like in the future, if we have CSTPs that are updated, I know they don't get updated every year, but I mean, 10 years, 20 years or something. Will that also be a consideration too? Because that was a source of frustration. In my district, for example, we use the old CSTPs. That's part of our performance appraisal system. It's also a part of our mentoring system. If I am and I go into people's classrooms, I'm using these old CSTPs, not the new ones, because we haven't had time to fold them into the systems, get them into our contract, get them into stuff. So is that something that we are looking to do here?
That's outside 1263.
I'm gonna take that one up.
Sorry.
So, yeah, just to say that the CSTP were updated by and adopted by you last year, a new continuum of teaching practice that makes them more usable on the ground, is about to be released, we hope this summer. Induction programs will be responsible for updating their programs to these new CSTP. All of that, the old and the new, are available to employers to use at their own choice. And they're not mandated by the Commission for Employer Use and Evaluation or any of that. So the scope of our expectations with regard to CSTP is that, first of all, they guide the development of all of our standards. Statute says that. So as we update the CSTP, we'll be looking at where we need to update TPEs to make sure we've still got good alignment down the road. But their target is induction, and that is post this process. And
I appreciate that, but that's not exactly at all what I was talking about.
Okay.
And at my job, we use those CSTPs when we get new teachers, when we get student teachers, following the old ones, right? And my question is, will those new ones be part of this? Because it's still the basis for which we are preparing our teachers to go through this TPA process. And it says it on the commission webpage. It says it in all of the supporting documents and all the guides. So that's, it's just, they're two different.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question
Yeah.
well. The TPAs are focused directly and exclusively on the TPEs. The TPEs are organized right now around the prior construct of the CSTP. The broad categories of the CSTP have not changed from the old to the new. There's more and some nuanced differences in the new set that may or may not be reflected in the TPEs. I know we've done crosswalks. I'm not prepared. I don't think our team is prepared to answer the question about what that alignment looks like right now. We could certainly come back for a further discussion about that. But the TPEs themselves are what will guide TPAs and candidate performance around within the TPAs. And they are directly aligned to the broad category the CSTP. Our TPEs are, and our CSTPs are, and the TPAs are as well. So
And thank you for that. And another compounding, something related to the CSTPs, when candidates are in their preparation programs at colleges and universities, the professors are saying, follow these new CSTPs, learn these new CSTPs, they will be the basis of everything. And then when they do the coursework, the CSTPs are the basis for that coursework too. So my point is, we don't want any more confusion in this process. We need to pick one and then say, this is the one we're going to go with. And I'm just hoping that the one we pick is the newest one, of course, but that we stay the course with that one so that everyone gets into alignment with that, because we don't want people to go, hey, I'm going to learn this whole thing. And even the titles of the CSTP standards have changed. So, because my name is in the book, I decided to read it. I see the actual differences there. So I wanted to make sure that that was part of this process. Also, with the implicit bias that is possible here in looking at candidate work, I happen to know some of the folks who are grading parts of the TPAs, and what they're telling candidates is that they need to follow APA format. If you don't, you don't pass. And I'm just telling you what professors are telling their students. I'm just making sure that this is just noted. I don't see in the rubrics some of these requirements that they're telling people, like the CSTP thing, like the APA thing and all of that. I just want to make sure that if we are putting out there that there is no particular stylized way that you're supposed to put together your writing, that's clear too. Because where it says you need to put references, for example, in the Cal APA, because I saw that we're talking about both, that you have to quote from scholarly sources, and you have to put those things in stuff with APA format. That's clear. Are we talking about Turabian? Are we talking about UCLA? What format are we talking about if we're not talking about APA? I've just thrown all this stuff out there because it's all relevant and it's all what people are experiencing out in the field.
I think we want a response, correct?
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I just want to kind of maybe play the tape forward a little bit here so you can understand what to expect with the TPA production from this point on. So we're going to hold and have updated the current sort of TPA models, which become TPAs, while we are putting out a request for information for new TPAs, right? What we're doing here, the recommendations of the RDI TPA workgroup are very high level, right? And so if those are approved, we'll turn those into something that's a little bit closer to specifications and implementation plans. And then after that is approved, we'll be giving updates on what we're doing. So we're going to go from the very, very, very big, which is just sort of like, where are we on this map? We agree that this is the direction that we're heading with regard to the design. So that we can do a feasibility assessment and start to spec it out. And then we will have a lot of time to kind of get into the APA and into the specifics of deploying the new model. So I just, great questions. Thank you. I think that we're going to have a lot of conversations around this table about what we want this performance assessment to be. We have a shot at creating the next generation performance assessments, and I think all of the authors are sitting around the table. So I just wanted to provide that sort of big picture. We're moving from the big, and we're going to start to get specific, including bringing back implementation plan that is getting closer to the details of the specifications of what we might do with feasibility, with ideas like you might want to consider this, or this. These could be options where they're flexible for models. And so that's when we're going to start to narrow.
And so then the short answer is maybe these comments that I'm giving are for August and not today. And that's why I said, if it's not today, it's okay. I can save all of this for a conversation then. But the one thing that is high level that I want to mention is something that Aaron Giffens gave us in the form of a comment today about the transparency for program improvement. Not only if you give me some demographic information with successful completion rates, are you helping to inform candidates? Because I don't want to go to a place where they have 0% Black people, being successful on the TPAs. I mean, that's, something, but also for program improvement itself, because that self-reflective process that's embedded in our accreditation system, that needs to be something that is considered at the highest of levels, because that helps also eliminate some of the implicit bias in the process that we're talking about. And it's the reason why the RDI TPA group exists in the first place. So hopefully that is a careful consideration in this, and some of the things that I mentioned that people have been experiencing is also considered in high-level discussions that we're having as we narrow it down to a process that is going to.
Commissioner Francois.
Thanks for that, Commissioner Davis. First, I want to extend my gratitude once again. I think every time you present, I just remember being in the room, listening to some of the deliberations and thinking to myself, these are really smart people doing something that's really, really hard and trying to come into consensus about really complex things, and that they kept showing up on such a cadence, I think was number one, a huge achievement. But I'm just very grateful that we have folks who volunteer their time to do this kind of foundational, complex work so that we can grapple with it at the next level, which leads to the next level, and then hopefully leads to something that is. So thank you so much. And I also want to just kind of acknowledge my UC colleagues who participated on the work group. Tori Harvey from UC Santa Barbara, Tina Sloan, who you all know, from UC Santa Barbara, and Matt Wallace from UC Davis. So in the spirit of these being foundational recommendations, and that the details has not been fleshed out yet, I would just like to offer 4 considerations as you begin to flesh this out a little bit. Actually 5 now that I'm responding to Commissioner Davis. I think that what Commissioner Davis was talking about is the challenges that we're going to face when you say embed commission requirements into existing programs, right? Particularly existing university-based program, because many of our programs are credential master's degree programs. And just as an example, so if I'm embedding into my social foundations course, because it talks about cultural relevancy and sustaining pedagogy, and I'm embedding that, my expectation, because they're earning a credential and a master's degree, is that they do cite appropriate. And if I don't expect that, then we're back to 2 separate tasks that they have to do. One for the credential, for the master's. So I really beg the staff to think about, when you say embedding, think about the context in which we're asking candidates, or we're asking program to embed that work, right? Is it a district program? Is it a CSU? Is it UC? Is it an independent? There's so much variation. Embedding is going to be something you have to pay really close attention to. The other consideration is in 1A, it says, I'll paraphrase, that culturally responsive and culturally sustaining, assets-based pedagogy be centered in the task. And we can all agree with that. I think that this is the direction the commission has been going for a number of years now, and I'm not sure the field has caught up with the aspirations of the commission. And so I would take into consideration how prepared are programs to implement in terms of knowledge, right? Foundational knowledge about what it means to be culturally relevant, culturally sustaining, asset-based. What are the theoretical foundations? What does it look like in practice? And then how does it translate into pedagogy? Do programs have the capacity for that? And I'm going to tell you no, not uniformly. So what is the phase-in kind of approach that needs to be taken so that we do this with integrity and that we don't water down what it means to be culturally sustaining and culturally relevant? And there was a mention of ethnic studies, which I can't remember which recommendation, and I thought, oh, well, that kind of complicates it a little bit more. This second consideration, or the third consideration, is what I'm calling unfunded mandates for educator preparation. So many of these recommendations are wonderful. I'm on board with all of them, and I have no idea how educator preparation programs are going to pay for them. And it seems to me that many in the public and many in the field, and I'm only speaking for higher education, and I'll go even farther than that. I only speak for the UC at this point. That we have some huge endowment that pays for these kinds of things. And the reality is that teacher education does not. And so when you talk about recommendations that increase workload, increase time that folks have to, time spent, those are unfunded mandates. Educator preparation has to pay for that from some way. And while I appreciate all the movement in the state around funding educator preparation, most of those funds don't go to operational costs. They go to candidate support, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Going into teaching should be free for anybody who aspires to engage in the most important profession in the world. That doesn't help us, though, in teacher preparation when you ask us to redesign our entire curriculum to meet particular standards. Yes, we can do it. Yes, we want to do it, but that means we also need funding to make that stuff happen. The fourth consideration I want you to think about is there are multiple times in the recommendations where we're asking mentor teachers to take on the role of a teacher educator, which I 100% agree with. They are the support person. They are teacher educators in the field. And they are also full-time teachers, all of whom are on union contract. And the scope of what they can do within their time is limited. And so to write down expectations, to expect them to participate in orientation, participate in local scoring, provide, explicit personalized feedback, all of those things, while they sound great on paper, I'm not sure about the feasibility of it. And then we could talk about how we fund that, release time, paying for substitute teachers, et cetera. I can get on board with that too. Not crazy about pulling teachers out of their classroom, away from their kids to do that. But so those are things that have to be thought through. And I appreciate your comments, about we're here and we're going to be building from it. But I just want to voice the considerations that come to mind. And I don't think that they are considerations that most folks around the table haven't thought about. My fifth consideration is phased approach all the time. This cannot happen overnight. It will not happen overnight. And if it does, what you will get at the implementation level is a patchwork of things a set of check boxes rather than very thoughtfully designed and designed and implementation of practice. And I think that I've said all that I need to say. I want to thank you for your time and your effort. Those were a lot of big consideration. And if you would like to call me into a room to go into the minute details of all of that, I'm ready for you.
Commissioner Pavley.
Commissioner. Firstly, I want to start by thanking Dr. Wall. We're delighted to work with you. You had your work cut out for you, and I know you're so congratulations. And also you really bring the on-ground, very, very fresh information and lived experience to this work. So it's going to be a huge asset. Few things that I wanted to share. Firstly, again, a big thanks. Giving us best practices is incredibly important. I think Dr. Yates has, and I'm sure I was waiting for him to speak. He's been reminding us all along about the need for focus, streamlined, and actionable, and prioritized, next steps. And I would add coherent as well to that because that's sort of what I'm thinking about as I read all these elements. How do they all fit? Coherent, meaningful, authentic, as I said. So a few suggestions or thoughts as to help narrow things down. I'll start, I think, when Anna Marie spoke about financial barriers. We've heard lots of our public talk about financial barriers. And clearly we do not want to increase any or ideally reduce financial barriers for our students. But I also want to emphasize that we cannot simply transfer costs to our educator preparation programs. We just cannot. There is no capacity there. So without an appropriate funding stream, it will be incredibly difficult for our educator prep programs to absorb any additional uncompensated workload. And there is some implications regarding that in these recommendations, the individualized feedback, the local scoring. So I think that's going to have to be a paramount. We don't want to have perfect be the enemy of good because perfection is just not going to be pragmatic. And so I encourage us to think about those variables as you narrow things down. And like Dr. Francois said, I'm happy to join in a room anytime as well to discuss further. Similarly, the role of the mentor teacher also does have working and financial implications that do need to be considered in this. As I am thinking through the coherence, some of the recommendations almost seem to contradict each other in my mind. And so I won't belabor what they are. We can talk more about them. We've been talking about, the feedback that's been coming out periodically, and I know we've been doing this, but happy to elaborate on those. And then I think there was a recommendation to see around the role of CTC with the TPAs, APAs, and the role of the convener and the supporter of this process. And I think that's a really good recommendation. And I would also ask CTC to consider taking on the role of calibration for scoring. There is going to be a huge lift on part of all of the EPs, and I think we talked about a phased approach. I think of a more scaffolding approach as well. However, we can see this. And then I have a very minor topic, and that's regarding the survey. So there was a presentation on how I think it's a pretty surveyed, and so my recommendation would put some items into the survey, but I don't know what exactly the survey is going to be. That's not that one.
Commissioners, Commissioner Brown.
Well, thank you so much to all the members of the work group, the co-chairs, the staff. Having seen the work group in action from September to now was just extraordinary. The process that you went through, that everyone went through to get to this point was phenomenal. And to see that level of work happen in such a condensed timeline was just amazing. And I won't repeat, I support the comments that my previous commissioners made. So I was checking off as they were saying, so I'm going to try to focus it on what has not been said. Except for Commissioner Pavri's comment, I want to elevate the survey because as the mother of a recent completer, she and I had words when I said, put that in your survey. She goes, Mom, I am so tired of writing. I am so tired. I don't want to put that in my survey. So that's a real world example of candidate fatigue when you get to the end. So if there's any way we could consider that or survey along the way, I don't have an answer, but I know the implementation plan is going to bring it all together to the nitty gritty. I do have, I'm sorry, I'm going to dabble in the nitty gritty for a second. Interim action 4. I just want to say how excited I am that we now have a Department of Data and something.
Research evaluation assessment.
That one.
Yeah.
Director Wallleitner, I would like to ask on interim action 4, I'm excited to see that you are looking at the number of candidates who start but don't complete. So in that vein, that's that I think I've brought up at previous meetings. So in that, I think it would be interesting and I'm curious about the time. So the number of candidates who start but don't complete within 1 year, within 3 years, within 5 years, more than 5 years. I'm curious about the timeline and what we mean by but don't complete. By when? You know, how long is a reasonable time that we think it's okay? So that's just a wish for the future. Also, I recognize I'm so excited to see the implementation plan. And I know that we are asking you for the Goldilocks option. You know, we want flexibility, but we want enough structure so that we get support. So I cannot wait for that implementation to share what that is. So thank you for all your hard work. Great agenda item, great work.
Thank you. I think I have a Commissioner Lit.
Thank you. Let me add a few comments to my colleagues. First, just a note that I think this topic is fundamental to our work, and I truly appreciate the seriousness with which it's being addressed by my commission colleagues, by all the members of the work group, by commission staff, and by members of the public. Elevating, strengthening, supporting the teaching profession, the educator workforce is essential to the public good. Developing strong standards and authentic measures of performance that undergird those standards is what strengthens the profession and public confidence in support of the educator workforce. So for all of those reasons, I've long been a supporter of strong and authentic, well-designed and well-supported performance assessments for educators, as well as for classroom students. And that should be part of a well-considered evaluation system that relies on multiple measures of performance. So this is what undergirds my enthusiasm for building a strong system here. At the same time, we do know that the current TPA system is both important but imperfect. And the evidence and public concern demands that we continue to do better. We have to do that. So let me offer a few thoughts about that process of doing better in light of the work group report, their recommendations, and then this proposal. So first, kind of want to highlight a part of the report we haven't talked about yet, but I really appreciated the update on the interim actions. And I think that's really promising. It also should be encouraging to the public that we can strengthen and improve this system, that we have the levers and the tools and the expertise and the commitment to continue to refine and update the system in the ways that we know it needs. So I think that's really important, and I appreciate that aspect of the report. Second, but it's not really second in my priority list, deep appreciation for all the members of this working group The work of the commission so relies on the time, effort, expertise, and commitment of principally volunteer educators willing to do the work to help strengthen our educator workforce. And all the members of the working group are to be commended on those efforts. Thirdly, of course, commission staff as well have supported and strengthened that work. And then we've really just been elevated by so much thoughtful public engagement and commentary over the years, and including through this process. So I just want to offer deep appreciation for everybody involved in the work. My encouragement is that the commission approve the proposed action item and direct staff to use the report as a foundation for an implementation plan. Let me add my own interpretation of that is that the charge to commission staff should be a broad and a flexible one. The 24 recommendations, if I counted them right, should guide and support, but not direct. I think commissioners' input, and we've heard really thoughtful comments by colleagues today, public comment, feasibility, and otherwise, those should all be additional considerations and available to staff. I'll say for myself, I would be disappointed if what we get in August is a detailed action plan linked directly to each one of the recommendations as they're currently written. Not that I don't appreciate and value the work, but I think this is a fine start, but we need some more fine tuning. So my hope is that a fine-tuned implementation plan would be more precise, more streamlined, and more focused clearly around priority goals with consideration for feasibility and impact, and a real focus on the levers that are most essential to tackling the key challenges and priorities that we've elevated over recent period. I'll highlight the ones that come to mind for me, and that should be fodder for the staff along with all the other inputs that are available. So these are some things that elevate to me to the level of essential need for effort. Number one, we have to find ways to lower the stakes of the exam and advance the formative and educative nature of the process. So the TPA was meant to be one important component of a multi-tiered evaluation system, yet we've built this system that really heightens the stakes, elevates the pressure, minimizes the educative value and authenticity of the assessment, and that all erodes public confidence, starting with our educator workforce. So the secondary passing score, I think, is a good example of ways that we've worked to ameliorate that challenge, but I think we can continue to do more. Number two, we need to continue to find ways to lower financial barriers and advance equity and access. Again, eliminating fees for resubmission around technical issues is a really positive notation in that direction, and I think we can continue to do more. Diminishing bureaucratic and technocratic burdens is fundamental. The authenticity of the assessment is eroded by, 100-page handbooks that make this a complex scavenger hunt for candidates, as opposed to an authentic effort to demonstrate what they know and are able to do. The core tasks of these performance assessments are really fundamental to the profession. Thinking about your learners, designing lessons for learning, instructing, capturing evidence, both of what teachers do and what students take up and don't, and doing some assessment and reflection. That all educators should be able to do those things, and we should be able to have confidence that the assessment tools we're designing and requiring focus on those pieces. That to me is what's fundamental and essential. And lastly, which several of my colleagues had noted, but I'll underscore, enhancing program responsibility and transparency in support of program improvement, and doing so in ways that are feasible for the programs is really important. So that's what I'm hoping to see in August, some focused, actionable steps in line with priorities. And if that's where we're headed, then I would be supportive of the proposal. And again, I really want to thank and appreciate everybody for the really thoughtful ways that we've been engaged in this project.
Commissioner Lett. I believe I have Commissioner Brown and then Commissioner De La Torre.
Okay. Well, as a member of this commission, who's also a community college educator, I just want to say as we do this, thank you for getting this really up and in front of us, because that's why we're here, is to help prepare teachers who are going to be successful in helping raise and educate the children of our state. And as a strong foundation as an institution of higher education, I just want to say, as this is done, let's keep remembering that the community college student is often where these people start to think about becoming teachers. So as we build this system has always known of a credential since 1967, I believe, as postgraduate, post-BA. And I think now we're really wanting, I just want to say, that's enough, that the community colleges are a strong contributory preparation base. And as we think about all these pieces, which all my colleagues have identified, let's keep all of the systems engaged. We'll be more successful. That's it.
I'll keep it brief because I believe all my colleagues have said everything that I had been thinking of, but I did want to congratulate Dr. Wallleitner and welcome her to the commission. And also I wanted to recognize all of the work group. I looked at the demographics and the roster and wanted to mention how difficult it is to have so many individuals working together in a work group, to come together and to devote so much time and effort, and to have such a large group of diverse individuals. And when you look at the roster, and I was looking at the demographics, and I appreciate all of the diversity of those individuals, and to have so many different people representing so many different views, and all of them agreeing, coming together and in so much agreement. When so many different people can agree so much, then they have to be on the right track. And I'm very much in support. I mean, nothing is going to be perfect, but when you have so many people agreeing so much, then it's on the road. So I'm very excited about this, and we're going to reflections for this group and all the dedication.
I think I have Commissioner Kine.
Briefly, I just want to say thank you to the team and the work group for being so responsive to the field, being thoughtful about really a new direction for assessing our educators that are coming into this profession. I do acknowledge that this has the potential to overhaul our preparation programs, and do encourage CTC, CDE, our higher ed partners to advocate for appropriate support and funding to be able to really institute the work that is at hand. But thank you.
Are there any other commissioners? Sure.
I'll just briefly, because as Michael said, much of what I've been thinking has been said by my colleagues, but gratitude to the leadership that brought this to us, to the co-chairs and to our CPC staff and the amazing group of volunteers. We can't do this work without our educators behind us doing that. Secondly, the heavy lift and the compressed time. I just don't recall a time in CTC history where this has been accomplished. So again, kudos to all of you. I share the concerns of my higher ed colleagues regarding the impact on our educator preparation programs. You've heard me say that before. I've said it at this table. I've said it private. And so as we move forward with this implementation plan, we're going to have to be mindful of the impact this is going to have on educator prep. And as my colleagues have said, do this work in a very phased in, cautious kind of way, while at the same time meeting the needs of our educators and our future teachers. So And thank you. And Ira, I wrote down complex scavenger hunt. We're gonna avoid that. So thank you.
Other commissioners? All right, this is an information action item, but before we go, I just want to say, I also thank you to the work group. And also thank you to the field for the concerns and making this an actionable work group. That really did this in a really small timeline. I mean, we look at the timeline, but it was so fast. Everybody has their jobs and their obligations and still came together to really focus on these concerns that the field is having. Because it has a direct impact on our candidates, has a direct impact on our workforce, and a direct impact on our students. So this is a major lift, and I know we still have a ways to go. We have to develop this implementation plan, but I also understand my colleagues' concerns because this has a direct impact in the here and now for folks. And some of the things that I just wanted to bring up is, you know, thinking about including our LEAs, including our county office of educations, because those mentor teachers are coming from those areas, and how do we continue to foster their relationships or their connection or their awareness or their understanding and their level of knowledge to continue to support our candidates as they transition out from their programs into the field. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for answering our questions. We know that this is the way to go, but the reality is that this has an impact in the here and now. And we do want to make this better. We do want to make it for the next generation. And I think we have a great opportunity to do that. So with that said, I know it says no action is required, but there is some action, right? Staff is requesting the commission adopt the works group's recommendation as a foundation for implementation plan development. And not to direct staff, but to give staff the opportunity to develop an implementation plan that includes a feasibility analysis and identifies options for operationalizing the recommendations according to the statutorily required timeline. So with that said, do I have a motion from any commissioners? Do I have a second? Commissioner Mancias, we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I have two hands that went up at the same time. So Commissioner Davis.
But it's a question of Executive Director Sandy.
Okay.
And it is about, more than a year ago, we talked about that secondary passing standard, I think connected to remediation at the institutions, higher learning preparation institutions, and that being something that was optional for institutions to engage candidates with if they met a threshold of requirement. That's something I don't know why that just popped into my head. Is that something that is going to be included here too, or is that something that we're not thinking?
Actually, the secondary passing standard is now required in statute. Senate Bill 1263 put that in statute, so effective January 1 of this year, candidates have a right to that. And we are implementing it with our contractor and with our preparation program, so the candidates.
So no remediation.
Well, the remediation part, I can't speak to that right now. I don't have that all uploaded in my brain as to how this is happening on the ground, but we certainly will. We'll give you more information about that.
So the one you won't throw that into the salad. As something that if we are doing it, that we do it across the board, or we don't do it at all across the board. If that
The remediation for
Yeah.
candidates that fall within that secondary passing standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of one of the action numbers, but yeah, that we're working on that piece.
If I may just speak to that too, because there is a concern associated with that, and especially since it's, you know, a candidate may choose not to submit, may finish their program, life may happen. I mean, I know this is not CTC or the work group's recommendation. This was the legislature's recommendation that there be no, you know, cost to the program for supporting the candidate, but I haven't heard something like this for any other field. And so this is another huge burden on programs. For how long will it go? So if you all can think through fleshing that one out a little bit, again, with some input.
We really appreciate, it has been a bit of a sprint. It's one of Adam's words he uses. for us, and it captures the spirit of what the last year has been like. And to be at this point where we have such a strong set of recommendations to use for the next phase, and the strong recommendation that we're hearing from all of you to phase this and to not rush it, but to allow for thoughtful implementation and thoughtful analysis of what it will take to implement within the scope of this set of recommendations. We welcome the opportunity to move into that phase. And I also just want to reflect for a moment, your permission, on the actions that we took yesterday represent, in my mind, kind of a phase one or maybe even a phase zero, which was to establish a different base for all performance assessments. The actions you took yesterday to adopt the math cycle or the CalTPA, the literacy performance assessment for all three of our existing TPA structures, the interim actions that have been in play since February when you took those actions, everything is getting a reset July 1. There will be flexibilities for candidates and the new crop of candidates, they don't know except what they hear from, colleagues that, oh my God, this is a nightmare, or it's not a nightmare, or whatever they may be hearing. For them, this is brand new. For the faculty, it's not brand new. So the staff effort to make sure that every assessment coordinator in every institution and program is fully aware of what changes have been made so that they can provide that information. It becomes part of how you put this requirement in front of your candidates that you've enrolled and move it forward. There are opportunities that will be undertaken this year that, again, I think we said this several times yesterday. Our goal has been to improve the system we have as immediately as we can and to support these changes going forward in 25-6 and beyond while we take up this perhaps more significant reset that 1263 and the RDI TPA group are recommending to us, putting a request for information, an RFI, out into the field to invite new considerations around a model for performance assessment that will then undergo development and then undergo implementation. We're talking 5 years down the road, potentially, before we've hit maybe 3. Okay, Adam's, what? 5 years? Not next year? No, it's not next year because we're going to be thoughtful about this. But but continuing to make sure that we are attentive to the pain points that candidates feel, the commission cannot be the reason people can't get a credential. Okay, well, we can be, but set the bar appropriately. And an assessment that is challenging for technical reasons is not getting to the heart of the matter. And that's why we're doing all of this. So we want to get to the heart of the matter. I think we got closer yesterday with all of the adoptions to the heart of the matter. And that's a new base for the new development that's going to be coming forward. So totally appreciate the recommendation from all of you for a phased approach that is consultative in the ways that it needs to be. So we are continuing to have our finger on the pulse of who will be impacted by this and who has to be responsible for implementing it going forward. So thank you very much.
I do have a motion by Commissioner Brown and a second by Commissioner Macias. Will the recording secretary please call for the vote? Each member please respond with aye, nay, or abstain.
Before I call the vote, Commissioners Cotton and Martinez, do you guys?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Before I call the vote, do you guys have any disclosure?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, no, there's nobody else in the house, and I will also be abstaining since I joined late.
Disclosure, I'm in the office and there are folks working in the office today.
Do you have anybody individual in your office right now?
Not at this moment, no.
All right. Danette Brown. Aye. Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Carol Cotton.
Aye.
Christopher.
Aye.
Michael De La Torre.
Aye.
Pinaquino Aye. Lit. Ira Lit.
Aye.
Ruben Mencias.
Aye.
Monica Martinez.
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim. Thank you, Dr. Waltleitner, Dr. Redfern, also Dr. Estrada Reveles, if you're still here. And just thank you also to the work group. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Our last item is 3G, the potential alignment with the national accrediting body for pupil personnel services school social work in the area of advanced standing. This item is being presented by Roxanne Purdue. This is an action item. Ms. Purdue, will you please begin?
Good morning, Commissioners, Executive Director Sandman, and public members. Presentation move. Okay, before us today's item 3G. Which presents potential recommendations concerning an alignment between the National Accrediting Body, Council on Social Work Education, also referred to as CSWE, Start Learning, and the Commission on Teacher Credentialing in the area of advanced standing for pupil personnel services, also known as PPS, and social work, referenced as SSW. A proposed revision to PPS SSW preconditions is presented to commissioners for discussion and possible action. Depending on the action taken, staff will then examine Title V of the California Code of Regulations, Section 80049 for the PPS SSW, and if necessary, return to you for further discussion and consideration. And since we're talking throughout the item a little bit about the alignment between that national accrediting body, CSWE, and the commission, I wanted to give you a few pieces of information on them to start getting us familiar with them. So CSWE is a national nonprofit accrediting agency, and they were founded in 1952. So they are not a recent accrediting body. They have over 750 accredited programs, and they are recognized by the Council of Higher Education as the sole accrediting agency for school social work education in the U.S. and territories. So that last piece is significant because it has a big impact on our California programs, school social work programs. It's the only national accrediting body. So that alignment between the commission's California programs and the national accrediting body is something to consider. The CSWE recently had a change in policy that impacted all Master of Social Work programs accredited by CSWE. The CSWE Board of Accreditation requires all institutions with CSWE accredited MSW programs who also have a Bachelor of Social Work programs by 2025. I think that was in June. So we're there. While some institutions with CSWE accredited MSW programs already had BSW programs, others did not and had to develop these programs to maintain their CSWE accreditation. As part of its effort to grow bachelor's and master's degree programs, CSWE also adopted another requirement related to individuals graduating from BSW programs and matriculating into the master's in social work programs. This is called advanced standing, and it's mentioned throughout your item. And it's for candidates that it must be offered to all candidates who hold the BSW. That's been accredited by CSWE. And from there, they are matriculating into that Masters of Social Work program. And advanced standing essentially is that candidates are able to not repeat any generalist content that they did in their bachelor's program when they do their master's program. California's PPS school social work programs are tied to their master level programs. Precondition that would need to be updated would be precondition 2. Precondition 2 talks about the units that must be completed in order for them to complete their program and obtain their credential. At this time, it's 45 semester units and the equivalent quarter units and for a program. It's also necessary to examine Title V of the California Code of Regulations. And that section that pertains to this is 80049. It's not something that's an action item, something to be considered today, depending on the action you take on approving the change in precondition number 2. Then we move forward. If there is approval for you from that action on the precondition, then staff will move forward with a change in a potential change in the Title V regulations. And it would come before you again, if that were the case, for discussion and further action if necessary. After multiple discussions with members of the PPS school social work community, as well as additional research, staff proposes adding the following language to precondition 2. Programs may award advanced standing for PPS school social work candidates who have completed a CSW accredited baccalaureate degree program in social work. Advanced standing candidates may be granted equivalency for baccalaureate level coursework that covers general social work concepts and not associated with school social work and child welfare and attendance authorization performance expectations. And last, in 2019, the commission had an update in the standards for PPS credentials. And with that came performance expectations, which they hadn't had before, and now is aligned with our other credentials. So this the generalist content is not covered in performance expectations and would not be covered in performance expectations. That would still need to be completed by the candidates who are going through the school social work program. So staff recommends that the commission review the information presented in this agenda item and, if appropriate, adopt the proposed revisions to precondition 2 for the PPS school social work credential program. This potential action would also be needed to more closely align with the standards for the national accrediting body, the Council for Social Work Education. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We're now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public?
No public comments.
Public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Davis.
Good morning. Good presentation. I just wondered, because it doesn't mention here, is there any negative fiscal impact to the commission or a fiscal impact at all? Was this alignment? Is this going to cost us an additional something to be in alignment with or in partnership with accrediting agents?
No, staff that serves in the area of PPS school social work would need to update the precondition 2 with the language I mentioned. And then after that, we would need to examine, if approved, we would need to examine the Title V regulations and go through that process. So it would just be the staff who normally works in that area continuing to work in that area. So no cost for commission.
Commissioner Erickson.
Thank you for your work on this, and our membership who have SWA programs were very, very excited to see this agenda. So thank you very much. It's going to make their lives easier.
Mr. Poppy.
So I just had a quick question. What proportion of our PPS programs have national?
You know, I've been
There's a national, not national, there's a California body of school social work programs. And they, I believe, meet once a quarter, if I recall, and I go to all those meetings. And as I recall from the meetings and those that attend, I believe all of them have CSWE accreditation except for one. I've never taken a survey.
A high proportion of our programs do.
Proportion. And they have been, those members of that body have been for the last 2 years interested in this work.
Any other commissioners? Yes, I have a couple questions, and Commissioner Davis asked about the fiscal impact. And I guess this also aligns with the impact on our programs in California.
Yeah, so our portion would actually help them. The cost would be associated with CSWE. So them requiring a bachelor's program in social work in order for them to stay accredited by CSWE. That's going to cost money, but it's not something that but something that's required by their national program. And we're trying to be in alignment with that national program.
So then, because we're trying to be in line with the program, moving forward, will candidates have to have BSW in order to go into an MSW program?
No, it's just that they wouldn't have, so if they had the BSW from CSWE accredited institution, they wouldn't have to repeat generalist content. So if they come from another major in their bachelor program, they would have the normal full program that they would do. There would be generalist content that they completed.
So then would programs have to adjust? They have somebody with a BSW. They have somebody that has a completely different undergrad. They have to adjust their programs now because they have almost.
There's different ways they could approach it. Even now, you could look at a program and do equivalency for a student who had work that you could say met a requirement, and then it would just be a course that they maybe didn't need to take or maybe still need to take because not all of it was covered. So the question is, what's equivalent for that student in the generalist content? And I think that an institution that had a BSW program and an MSW program, you would probably design your MSW program to consider the fact that some of your candidates may be coming in through the BSW option.
Just because I know I've noticed a lot of students that go into social work, they do a bachelor's in psychology, for example. It's a majority of students, and then they end up going into like a social work program.
There's going to be additional opportunity. CSWE requires their accredited institutions to have the BSW program in order to have the MSW accredited program. So I think there'll be more opportunity for them to have a bachelor's in social work if that's their interest. But if they come from a different major, then they just wouldn't have that opportunity to have equivalency in their MSW.
I'm so confused. Primarily because there's a lot of acronyms, BSW, SW.
I might have said W wrong.
Let me just, if I can clarify something, the commission doesn't require an MSW to get the school social work credential. So we are talking about making allowances within the credential program so that these institutions that have Bachelor of Social Work programs that are CSWE accredited, which is that National Professional Social Work Accreditation, that then have to abide by the advanced standing pathway for their master's programs. We're just trying to remove a barrier for candidates who want to get that school social work credential. We're not lowering our standards. We're just helping these institutions that have that national accreditation. But the questions about what an institution will have to do with their BSW or their MSW programs, that's outside our purview. That's their choice if they want that national accreditation.
But it's not mandating, say for instance, and again, I apologize for my lack of knowledge in this area. I'm sorry. So for instance, UCLA does not have a bachelor's in social work. We have an MSW. This would not preclude candidates who want to get an MSW, who want to get into our MSW. It doesn't affect us at a campus level. We would have to create pathways for a bachelor's pathway for students who want to go into social work.
Well, it would affect you if you wanted that CSWE accreditation for your master's program. And you wanted to also have a Bachelor of Social Work. And then CSWE would have some requirements for you to make sure that you have an advanced standing pathway for your BSW folks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now the connection with teacher ed is starting.
It took us a while to also understand what we could do to help out and would it affect our programs. Roxanne spent a ton of time meeting with the school social work faculty at all of the institutions that have this CSWE accreditation.
Thank you.
BSW is Bachelor of Social Work, and I kept saying that acronym without ever having said what it was. So there you go.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners?
Just,
Commissioner Poppy?
I've students in California have CSWE accreditation, so that's a big number.
Thank you.
So this is an action item. Do I have a motion that the commission approve the proposed changes related to advanced standing and precondition 2 for pupil personnel services, school social work? I have a first by Commissioner Macias. Do I have a second? Commissioner Davis? Is there any further discussion? Will the recording secretary please call for the vote? Each member please respond with aye, nay, or abstain.
Danette Brown. Aye. Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Cheryl Cotton. Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael De La Torre.
Aye.
Daquino Shire.
Aye.
Bonnie Clark.
Aye.
Ira Lip.
Aye.
Mencias.
Aye.
Monica Martinez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Purdue. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Having no additional items, I adjourn the Educator Preparation Committee.
Yes. I will now recess the general session and the members of the commission will go into closed session. The general session will reconvene.
So,
hang on.
commissioners, let me just explain. We have a time certain that we need to take up in closed session before 11 o'clock. And this is a natural break since the next item could take us longer. So what I'm proposing is that we break to have that item and then reconvene in general session to finish ledge and budget.
Yeah.
And then we'll reconvene again in closed session to finish off the rest of the agenda. If that works for everybody, this is, I'm guessing that members of our community who'd like to stick around and join us after this next bit of business, we probably won't be more than maybe 30 to 45 minutes in that roughly. So that's the plan with your programs. We'll do it that way. Thank you.
So commissioners, let's take a quick 5-minute break and be back in here at 25. Okay, welcome back. I now reconvene the general session. And I convene the legislative committee. The committee has 2 items before it today. Item 4A is to reaffirm the commission's legislative guidelines and adopt a new advocacy policy for legislation. This is an information action item that was presented by Jonathan Howard. Oh, I forgot that you're supposed to say that.
No, I'm happy to have something. It's just, I was gonna let you, I was getting,
Madam Vice Chair.
I was getting the side notes over here that I should say something. I thought I'd just let you see how long I
You
can.
know, I have to say, this script didn't sound familiar to me. Let's do it. Please.
Yes, Mr. Howard, please.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good morning still, commissioners. I mentioned in the last commission meeting how the commission's adopted legislative guidelines serve as a guidepost and guide rail for much of the work of the Government Relations Office. After my presentation last month, it was brought to my attention that not all the members of the commission might be familiar with the guidelines. The commission adopted these legislative guidelines in 1995, an especially active time for the education legislation and changes to teacher licensing in the state. This is the decade that brought us new teacher induction, performance assessments as credential requirements, credential waivers, preliminary credentials, restructuring of the special ed credentials, teacher prep for instructing English learners, CalTeach, and more. These guidelines embody core principles reflected in the Commission's strategic plan, providing direction and ensuring that my work in the Government Relations Office is aligned with the Commission's vision and guiding principles. When staff are asked to provide technical support, provide input and guidance to policy and fiscal staff on legislation, these guidelines are the lens through which we approach these requests. Much of the technical support and input occurs without direct input from the full Commission. This issue is compounded by the fact that the Commission's calendar and the legislature's rarely align. This has created persistent timing gaps between Commission meetings and important legislative windows. In February, when the Commission met, most legislation is not yet in print, limiting the Commission's ability to provide direct input. In April, when we meet again, many bills have already passed out of their policy committee in the first house and are awaiting a fiscal hearing, a floor vote, or are already in the second house. Nearly half of the bills in the status of legislation item that I will present next have already passed out of their policy committee in the second house, leaving only fiscal hearings for potential input from the Commission as a whole. Occasionally, calendars have aligned, and when they do, the Commission has provided valuable input, been able to take positions on legislation. I'm asking for the Commission to approve a process that maintains the current legislative updates during regular Commission meetings to inform the Commission about legislative matters and allow for the Commission's input on bills. But for times when the Commission is not meeting and legislative deadlines loom, staff may consult with the Chair and Vice Chair, enabling them to act on strategic communications if necessary. This approach preserves the Commission's existing process, our collaborative relationships with education partners and legislative contacts, and ensures the Commission's expertise informs the legislative process at the appropriate time. I respectfully request the Commission's affirmation of our legislative guidelines and approval of this new messaging framework. I welcome any questions and discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
John Alfeld, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Affelt with Public Advocates, a nonprofit law firm, an advocacy organization that challenges systemic causes of poverty and racial discrimination in California. We strongly support the item 4A recommendation to reaffirm the 1995 legislative guidelines and authorize enhanced strategic messaging between meetings. This approach advances educational equity by preserving the Commission's ability to protect educator quality standards. The Commission's 8 legislative guidelines serve as essential protections against policies that would undermine educator quality, particularly for students in communities that have faced systemic exclusion and marginalization. Guidelines requiring high preparation standards and appropriate qualifications are not bureaucratic barriers. They are equity safeguards that ensure all students, regardless of zip code or demographics, have access to qualified educators. As our organization has documented through decades of advocacy, students of color and low-income students in California are disproportionately assigned less qualified teachers. The Commission's guidelines provide critical protection against legislative proposals that would reinforce these inequities by lowering educator standards. The practical challenge identified in item 4A, the misalignment between legislative timelines and Commission meetings, threatens the Commission's ability to effectively fulfill its role as California's Autonomous Educator Standards Board. The proposed solution to authorize strategic messaging between meetings is both necessary and appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give a short pause. Sure. Okay. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments regarding the legislative guidelines?
Orion Act what?
Commissioner Pavey.
I read through these I developed in 1990. And also,
Correct. I did look through the history. The document I have is from 2017. Oh, at some point it was updated in 2017, or the document was, I wasn't here in 2017, so.
so I guess I just have a question around guideline 5. And that is, guideline 5 is the commission supports strengthens or reforms initiatives and opposes legislation that would undermine initiatives or reforms that previously had undermines that those that previously. And I kind of, that's the one that understand. The rest of them all seem perfectly fine with me. It sort of denotes in some ways that we're not open to change or meeting needs, current needs of students. I don't know, I'm looking for some rationale for why this is and possibly reframing or reworking that guideline, because it sort of shows us as fairly instrument. So we are meeting.
Would you like to respond? Yeah.
I can provide some insight on that. The legislature has 2-year sessions. Each year they introduce legislation. I think part of it is providing consistency to our counterparts and our other interest holders. If we took a position in the first day, this year, we took a position on a bill and we said, oh, we support it. And then the bill died or it was vetoed by the governor. And next year, the bill was reintroduced, the exact same bill. And then the commission took an opposed position, right? I think part of number 5 is having some sort of consistency in the dialogue that the commission is sending along when it takes positions on bills, so that people at the legislature come to understand where the commission is coming from on a process without seeming to go back and forth as the same legislation, because the same, I mean, I've only been here for a little while, but you guys have seen as I've made bills of interest is that a lot of the bills are the same year after year or very similar. And so I think I wasn't here when those were written, but that is the.
Maybe, I mean, just even as you explained it right now, that's not how I read it. And so that's what I'm asking for. If we could make some modifications to the wording here, but I don't know.
Is that your Director Sandy?
I did. I wanted to respond to that unless I don't want to jump in front of you, Commissioner.
The English teacher in me was just gonna say, just drop the latter 3/4 of the phrase. The commission supports legislation that strengthens or reaffirms initiatives and reforms, and just leave it there, because we don't need to know a time frame before, after, between, up and down, you know, when that is gonna occur. And if you left it more generic, then maybe it would read smooth. I understand what you're saying. And in a circular roundabout adjacent, that say that. But the English teacher in me tells me that if you start here with positive, then you go into a double negative and then to a positive again, that it just says the same thing. So you don't need the last part.
So if I could just add a little bit of perspective on this, just within the last hour or two, the commission received and adopted as a basis for next steps, the recommendations of the RDI TPA workgroup. That could be said to be an initiative in reform that it has now adopted. So if there is new legislation next year that wants to undermine that, this kind of a guideline would say, no, the commission is still very much on board with implementing. It would give us the flexibility to provide technical assistance about what we're doing, et cetera. So that I think it is when I very much appreciate the concern that you might be expressing here, Commissioner Pavry, that you know, are we holding, you know, faith with reforms from 30 years ago against all comers? I don't think the commission would allow or sustain that. I don't think you would allow or sustain that. But to the extent that we are engaged every time we meet with adopting something that sets a direction, and absent some other major new initiative that makes it not relevant anymore, holding firm with that and trying to support legislative direction that is consistent with the commission's strategic plan, et cetera. That's kind of the flexibility this affords. And English teacher, I totally appreciate you. English teachers are some of my favorite people. I think that the supports these kinds of things and opposes these kinds of things gives us the flexibility to say, you know, this is great and it really is consistent with things the commission is really on board with, or this is problematic because it opposes this, and here are some ways in which we could bring it into alignment. It's that kind of engagement that we can engage in on your behalf to carry forth and hold firm with what your commitments have been. And so the rest of the item that Mr. Howard has presented also suggests that in the absence of our ability to all be in this room to confirm where we are, the chair and vice chair are on speed dial for us. Before we take provide controversial feedback on any particular thing, we are engaged with the chair and vice chair on your behalf so that we've got the continuity of commission voice and perspective while we're doing it. So I think Jonathan would like to add something.
I want to add that these legislative guidelines as adopted or reaffirmed by the commission don't bind the commission. The commission is free to change its view at any point. These documents serve for staff and myself when we are asked for technical support. If I was asked for direction, someone introduced a bill and said, oh, we're doing this, and I'm aware of the commission's previous positions on that initiative, it would be outside of my scope and against the will of the commission is saying for me to offer technical support. Oh, well, the commission has taken a position that they don't believe that XYZ, and then I'm asked to provide technical support on legislation that would undo XYZ. This serves as a guide rail or a guideline where I can say, well, you know, I don't really feel comfortable doing that until I have direction from the commission, because the commission has stated unequivocally as a body of a whole, XYZ. So it doesn't make sense for me to start providing you technical support on legislation that's going to tear XYZ. Now, I could always come back and say, hey, there's this legislation that does ABC, and the commission says, hey, you know what, we really like that. Then that would change my guidelines. But without having a direct input, we use the guidelines to help guide the work that myself and other staff do when we interact with stakeholders and interest holders and our legislative partners at the Capitol.
And I will say, and Commissioner Brown and then Commissioner Francois, I was on my first read uncomfortable with 5.2. That was my sticking point. But I think hearing the way it was framed this morning shifted my perspective on it to this is providing something in that in between space where it's, you know, technical support has to be given and we're not here for you to act. And as you just explained, it would be odd and probably not a good idea if you were to give assistance or advice on something that went against what we said. So it can make sense to me now, but I definitely, number 5 made me not feel super comfortable initially, but I think I get it now. And I also want to say, regardless of who is sitting in the chair's chair, I feel like my confidence, at least since I've been on this commission, in the chair, whoever the chair has been, I feel like with that consultation piece too, I can't imagine a situation where the chair would advise in any way that was inconsistent with what the commission currently wanted.
Let's be clear, it's the chair and the vice chair. I'm gonna point that out.
My confidence. So Commissioner Brown, and then I think Commissioner Francois, and then Commissioner Litt.
This 5 read to me as a message out, not just a message inside us. This read to me that you don't get stuck trying to do something when somebody asks you to do so. You can say, I can't do that yet. And it also adds that piece that I think for the rest of us as a commission can be really are comfortable with is that our leadership connects with our executive, our commission, when we're not here. I think it gives us both and instead of just one side. So I read it differently than you did. I didn't read it as, oh, we'll be stuck with with things that are outdated. It was more like giving that message out, not just keeping it in here. If I read this as a legislator, it'd be like, oh, okay, we'll put you or try to go around the commission in between its meetings. While I'm
Central.
I get it. I get number one. And I don't know if this is even an appropriate question. It's kind of an in the weeds question, but when it says opposes legislation, what does that look like for the commission? Does that mean that, like, how is that enacted?
Well, it's different for how the commission does it. If I brought legislation forth and you said, we think this is awful, the commission could vote to oppose the bill. For as guidelines as they would work for our staff, it was that if the commission has invested time and energy into, just gonna pick this as I'm trying to avoid active legislation. But so let's just say the commission is in the process of revising special ed credentials. And we're going through the standards and we're updating them. And at the same time, legislation is, and you have taken votes here, you have had conversations. I have heard it, it is clear, it's public. And at the same time, there's legislation running that says, hey, we also want to do special ed, but we're going to do it in ways that don't align with what the commission is doing. In my work, when they come to us and say, hey, we're working on this bill, we want to do special ed, and we really appreciate technical support, I would point this 5 and say, I don't know if I can provide technical support at this time because your bill, as outlined, is in direct contradiction to actions that the commission has taken publicly.
So that's kind of the primary means by which opposition arises, is through the technical.
I'm not going to write a letter and say, the commission opposes this bill, and I'm not going to put that out there. It would just be, I would feel uncomfortable in my role as government relations providing technical support, given the fact that the commission has made a stated position on this and your legislation seems to be in opposition. Now, if they came to me and said, well, if I want my bill to align with what the work that the commission is doing, then it would be like, excellent, I can provide all sorts of technical support on that because your bill is in line with actions that the commission is taking.
And let me just amplify that. We can also say, and we always do, what's the problem you're trying to solve with this bill? And our work is very technical. And this team behind you has been very active this whole session, helping different ideas be informed by the technical nature of credentialing. And that's just a lot of what we're doing, is saying, if you want to achieve this, here are some things that exist that can help. Here are some things that exist that could be adjusted to achieve what your goal is. Is your goal consistent with what we know from the commission strategic plan, et cetera? So there's an array of ways in which we engage. But if it comes right down to it, and it's mid-March, and there's a bill that is just 180 degrees, in opposition, and we believe a position in writing on letterhead from the chair could be very helpful. That's a point at which, without the commission taking a formal position, we could approach the chair and vice chair and say, what do you think? And then issue a letter of opposition to a bill, take a position on a bill that the body has not yet had an opportunity to take. But we do very few of those. Most of our work is that working with our educational partners to help identify. We are, on your behalf, committed to keeping an effective and efficient system in place for the state. We're not trying to defend ineffective or inefficient. If there are efficiencies that are not going to compromise your adopted guidelines in terms of quality, in terms of children and educators who are prepared to meet them where to be instructed. We like to work to help craft solutions. That's really what we like to do on your behalf. And where there's a real problem, we're ready to champion it. So, we did that with the secondary passing standard 2 years ago. The commission adopted at staff recommendation, a secondary passing standard that then showed up in the final version of Senate Bill 1263 as something that the legislature expects us to maintain, secondary passing standard. And all of that came together and in a good way. So that's, how does it get activated? Through a lot of the conversations we have, but if necessary, between times, through a letter signed by the chair on your behalf.
I appreciate that. I just didn't know how it all worked. So that was helpful. Thank you.
Commissioner Lit?
Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. It's helpful and clarifying in a wide range of ways. I kind of want to maybe bring some attention back to the recommended action item, which is that we reaffirm the legislative guidelines and authorize staff to work with the executive director and the commission chair and vice chair in support of our collective priorities and strategic plan when it's necessary to do so, because we only meet so often. And I think that's again, I think this conversation is really helpful in illuminating in a variety of ways. We could spend a lot of time in the weeds. I definitely loathe for us to think about wordsmithing some guidelines. Each of us could probably think about ways to update the language here. And by the way, maybe staff wants to bring that to us at some point. I have words I might adjust and update, but I will not share them at this time. I think the thrust of the guidelines are, especially with this clarification, are solid and strong and useful, both for staff, for the executive director, and for the chair and vice chair to serve and work on our collective behalf when that's necessary, given that we only meet so frequently. I also just affirm what I'm sure all of my colleagues would agree with. We have a lot of confidence both in commission staff and our executive director, also in our chair and vice chair, who serve at our pleasure based on our nomination and election. And so I think with all of that, the recommended action here is really solid and strong. If at some point the staff thought it would be useful to update some of the language here, once every 30 years, that might be wise. But I don't know that it's necessary, at least not for me, in order to sort of affirm the general thrust that's before us here. But I do really appreciate the conversation and clarification. It's been useful.
Commissioner Lit, that almost sounded like a motion.
I would be delighted to turn it into a motion as written here in the action item.
Okay, so it sounds like I have a motion for the commission to reaffirm the legislative guidelines adopted by the commission in 1995 and authorize the staff to work with the commission chair and vice chair on strategic messaging regarding pending legislation between commission meetings. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Or is there further? I don't want to stop any further discussion, questions. Yes.
Does that mean as an English teacher, you're going to help with number 5?
Wordsmithing? I don't know that that's part of the motion. If I was asked for English teacher advice on
That's part of the motion. That's just the spirit of you and Chair Shire, assisting in the process, in our absence, whatever the process is. I'm just wondering if framing the process is also part of that or not, then it's not.
It certainly can be. We have very open conversation if there are needs. If there were to be any adjustments to this language, of course, we'd bring it back to you. I'm happy to work with the chair and vice chair as they need.
Thank you, and thank you for your confidence in me as an English teacher. Any other comments, suggestions, questions? Okay, seeing none. Will the recording secretary call for the vote? Each member please respond with aye, nay, or abstain.
Matt Brown. Aye. Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Christopher Davis.
Nay.
Michael De La Torre.
Aye.
Makita Kuno Shire.
Aye.
Bonnie Clark.
Aye.
Ira Lit.
Aye.
Luba Mencius.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Howard. And now you're with us for another item. Item 4B, status of legislation as an information item. Mr. Howard, will you please begin?
Since the commission last met, the legislature's House of Origin deadline has come and gone. This means that active bills have now moved into the second house, assembly bills are in the Senate, and Senate bills are in the assembly. The last day for policy hearings to meet and pass bills will be on July 18th. That day also begins the legislature's summer recess. Legislatures will be back in their districts until August 18th, when they return to Sacramento to begin a flurry of activity. The last day for fiscal committees to meet and pass legislation will be on the 29th of August, and the legislature has to wrap up all of their work by September 12th, when they recess for the remainder of the year. Of the 14 bills of interest I shared with the commission back in April, 11 are still active. Most of these have taken amendments, and those changes are reflected in the report. 2 of the 14 bills failed their policy committee deadline, and the last was held in fiscal committee during suspense hearings. Since the commission's last meeting, 2 bills have been added to the report as they were amended and now have provisions that affect the commission. Those 2 new bills are SB 848 by Senator Perez and AB 1454 by Assembly Speaker Rivas. The first bill, SB 848, is a response to the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team report on AB 218, which was released in January. This report addresses the significant financial impact of Assembly Bill 218 passed in 2019 on California public agencies, particularly school districts. AB 218 extended the statute of limitations for childhood sexual assault claims, leading to a surge in lawsuits against public entities for incidents that occurred decades ago. The report estimated that local education agencies would face $2 to $3 billion in liabilities. To address these challenges, the FIGMAT report offered numerous recommendations that can be broadly categorized in 2 areas: improving the tracking and financing of claims and strengthening preventative measures. SB 848 is the enacting legislation for the preventative recommendations found in the report. These include enhancing public safety by requiring clear professional boundary policies for school employees, expanding child abuse prevention training, and improving oversight and rigorous employment screening practices to prevent future misconduct. As part of the oversight measures of the bill, if it became law, it would require the commission to maintain the statewide data system that includes information relating to investigations, allegations of egregious misconduct of non-certificated staff at local education agencies and private schools. While the commission would maintain this database, it would not be responsible for ensuring the accuracy of the information contained within it. The second bill, AB 1454, is similar to last year's AB 222, with a stated goal of improving literacy instruction in California schools. The bill goes about this in 3 ways. First, it requires the Department of Education to identify professional development programs for effective means of teaching literacy that focus on educators who teach TK through 5th grade. Second, it requires the State Board of Education to adopt instructional materials in English language arts and English language development, and requires local education agencies that do not use state board approved material to certify that the material they do adopt is aligned to the state's criteria. Finally, the bill requires the commission to update administrator preparation standards to include training on supporting effective literacy instruction. So those are the 2 new bills. I know you guys are going to have some questions about the budget, and that is the next item, but I can provide a current quick update is that the legislature passed their version of the budget on the 13th. It was presented to the governor on the 15th. The governor has until today to sign veto or line item veto provisions of the budget before it goes into effect automatically. The legislature and the governor's office announced a deal on Tuesday of this week, and as we speak right now, the legislature is taking up those budget bills on the floor, including a budget bill junior and numerous budget trailer bills. And the next item on the agenda will have more details about that. So thank you so much for your time and attention, commissioners. If you have any questions about legislation or anything else, I'm at your disposal.
Thank you. Recording secretary, are there any, oh, excuse me, I skipped a line there or two. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
John Affeld, please unmute your microphone.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm John Affeld again with Public Advocates, here to urge the commission to oppose AB 1224 specifically. Last night, AB 1224 was set for hearing next week on July 2nd. We urge you by action today or by chair and vice chair direction to staff to formally oppose AB 1224 based on its clear conflict with commission legislative guidelines, and direct staff to communicate this opposition to the legislature immediately. AB 1224 would authorize substitute permit holders to teach for up to 60 cumulative days in any one classroom in a year, doubling the current 30-day limit. AB 1224 directly violates the commission's guidelines by failing to, quote, maintain or establish high standards for the preparation of public school teachers, unquote. 30-day substitute permit holders require only fingerprints and a bachelor's degree. No subject matter competence, no pedagogical training or training to support English learners and students with disabilities. Allowing these individuals to serve for 60 days, a third of the school year, reinforces the two-tiered education system where affluent communities have access to qualified educators, while low-income communities and communities of color are subjected to extended assignments by underprepared substitutes. Rather than cement into law permanently the ability of all districts statewide to double student exposure to untrained teachers, at most, the legislature should direct the commission to consider nuanced adjustments to existing regulations to address any specific current needs. And doing so would better permit targeting such permits based on local need and establish minimum quality assurances. Thank you.
We have no other.
Thank you. Okay, no other public comment. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Commissioners have any questions or comments on this item?
Not on what was just said by the public, so I just thought I'd wait. If anybody wants to talk about that public item before I change the subject.
Are there questions or comments on AB 1224 that was just? Well, I mean, I have questions, but I'll wait. I share the public comments concern, Mr. Affelt's concern about that. I'm not sure what the next steps would be. I don't have anything fleshed out, but I do share the concern about substitute being in a classroom for 60 days. I don't know where to go with that comment. Does anyone want to pick that up or
might clarify that this is an information item
That
only,
is-
so the body can't take action on it.
Thank you for that reminder. So, and thank you. I should keep us focused on that. This is information. No, I appreciate it. So Commissioner Brown, why don't you go ahead with your question?
I had a question about AB 11.3. Looks like it's been changed as written, and I wondered if you could kind of walk me through what the modifications are.
Yes. AB 1123, when it was introduced, would have added 3 new members to the commission. An ECE educator, an ECE educator, like a professor of ECE education, and then the administrator for an ECE facility. The bill was amended, and the current version of the bill would no longer add additional members to the commission. What it does is on the first vacancy of a member of the public, we have 3 of those on the commission. First vacancy of that would convert from a public member to a educator in PC educator space. And then one of the 6 teacher positions can be an early childhood, can be a credentialed teacher who also holds an early childhood educator. So it may be, that's not a shall for the 6 educators, for the 6 teachers, but we are losing one public member position and it is becoming a early childhood educator position.
There. Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, again, this is an information item, so no action is needed. All right, seeing no other comments or questions, thank you, Mr. Howard, for your presentations. We appreciate it.
You.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, could I just confer with the executive director really quickly?
Yes. Okay, so, or think amongst yourselves, use the moment for.
I'm gonna go ahead and take the opportunity then, just to ask for some background about AB 1224, the idea of extending the substitute days of service. What would the rationale be to try to increase flexibility for staffing, or?
Our understanding from communications with the author's office and the sponsors of the bill is that every alternative tool that they could have, a STIPS or a TIPS or a STIPSL. I don't know the TIPSL.
All a pip and stip.
A STIPS and the acronyms. Those, as soon as they have someone in that position, they scoop them up and move them into a full-time class under emergency credentials, and that they cannot find folks as regular substitutes. And so, and while they can place a 30, the argument is that they put someone in for 30 days and then there's a constant churn. And so while they acknowledge that there could be harm, they think that the continuity of instruction is more important than so that's their argument, is that we need some sort of continuity of instruction. So we're asking for the 60-day extension. We're asking from 30 to 60 days.
That's the position of the sponsor.
That's the position of the sponsors. We
So-
have asked for data on that. And we have unable to see any data on the data in our own.
We've been in active conversation with the sponsors, with the author's office, with committee staff about this. And, have presented an array of ways in which we could get the extended period of time that the sponsors are seeking for somebody who's not a fully credentialed teacher. We haven't come to as far as I know, I mean, this is still a very active conversation. The idea of revising the TIPSL, which is a temporary permit for statutory leaves, the PIP or the STIP or the long-term, what's the emergency? Leave that off the table. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm wandering into Aaron Skubel's terrain, and we don't want to do that. But so we've been working with how do we help solve the problem? How can the commission help you identify a solution pathway other than a 60-day substitute with no preparation or no training for 12-week continuous service in the classroom? I think that's a question that Mr. Affelt raised, and I think all of us are still concerned about those classrooms, right? So we are. It's still an active conversation, and this is an information only item, which means the commission can't take a motion or take action to direct that we take a position on this. However, what we do with regularity is have these conversations with all of you and bring your concerns to bear in conversations that we're having. And that we will absolutely commit to doing, and continue our work with, to try to support a policy that addresses the problem without undermining standards, that still fits within the guidelines that you have affirmed. So we're still hopeful there's a solution path. And in fact, we've been considering and I think would appreciate the opportunity to have a focused policy review with the sponsors of this bill, and with, the author of the bill, and to do so in as timely a way as we possibly can, to see if there's a way to, to craft a solution that we think could be better, that would reflect your guidelines and principles. And if that's not possible in this first year of a 2-year session, the bill could become a 2-year bill. So there's still to allow for that. So we recognize the challenges that the employer community has with staffing classrooms. We recognize we've been reporting on teacher shortages for some time. We recognize that. We also recognize that 12 weeks in a classroom with no preparation or training to be there has an impact on the young people being served, and how we balance that, as a state from a policy perspective is a critical question for the future. So we'd like to help mitigate the weaknesses that somebody coming in with no preparation would bring to that. And there's not a guarantee that all substitutes would bring that. There are many, many substitute teachers out there who hold credentials. They may be retired teachers, and there are multiple ways in which a substitute teacher can be exactly right for a setting. But this policy doesn't really acknowledge that kind of tiered levels of experience or preparation someone might bring to the environment. Someone, with a high school diploma and a baccalaureate degree and cleared fingerprints, but no other preparation, may not be a 12-week good solution for a classroom. And so we continue to advocate for some kind of mitigation for that potential adult being in that room. And with no objection, we'll continue to do that on your behalf. Work with the chair and vice chair as this bill continues its path, possibly toward the governor's desk.
Thank you. Commissioner Dillatore, did you?
Yes, I just wanted to add that not all substitute teachers are a day-to-day sub. We do have substitute teachers that are career substitute teachers. And to think that the 60 days would be a disadvantage, I'll tell you what's happening. They work 30 days and then they just contract them again for another 30 days. So it really is no big deal to have this 60 days. It's not going to change anything if you think that having the 60-day bill go through. All it will do is make it easier to have that individual in the classroom, because that's what's happening, having them there. And honestly, to have that continuity of instruction of that teacher in the classroom for those students, that they know that they'll have that teacher there for the 60 days, might be actually better for those students and that community in a lot of those classrooms. Knowing that that teacher will be there for those 60 days instead of not knowing, for both the students and the teacher, might be better. So I don't think it's as simple as saying, oh, we can't have that, because it's better than not having a teacher in the classroom. I don't know, because we also do have substitute teachers are part of our bargaining unit, and we have a lot of substitute teachers that they're very highly qualified to teach, and they love teaching because they do plan lessons. And so I don't think necessarily that it's a bad thing to have this to go through. I don't know that we should oppose this bill.
But again,
Well, you might be saying the same thing I was about to say, maybe. This is an information item, is that what you're saying?
Right, I'm just saying, it's information too that I'm sharing that like in our district, it would be very helpful to staff those positions.
Real quickly, I see we have Erin at the table, so I'm guessing you have something important.
I did just want to share that a previous iteration of this very commission agreed with you, and they developed the career substitute teaching permit. So those career substitute assignments do extend out to 60 days. That is built into the authorization. And those folks are required to have 3 years of experience serving as a substitute within the district or county that they're working for. And then the employer is responsible for providing mentoring and support during their assignment. So I think that's part of the technical solutions that we've been trying to work with the sponsor and the author around, is that there are documents out there that the commission issues that have served for these types of situations before. We also have, as Jonathan sort of mentioned, the teaching permit for statutory leave. And that's a document that has some training and, preparation around classroom management and IEPs and all sorts of really important things that, a substitute teacher would need to know if they're going to be serving in a long-term assignment. And those folks can serve in that assignment for the entire duration of the school year if the teacher of record is out on a statutory leave. So if they're out on a medical leave, if they're taking a really long vacation, whatever they might be doing, if the employer is required by law to give them that leave, those individuals can serve for the entire school year. So there are solutions that exist, and we look for the opportunity to find ways to fine tune those solutions if there's a barrier that's preventing employers from being able to utilize those to their fullest capacity. But so I just wanted to share that, the commission in the past has agreed with that sentiment that there is an important, place for a longer term substitute than 30 days. So the 30-day substitute permit, though, that's being proposed to be amended in this legislation is really the document that's intended only for day-to-day substitute. It's for covering those one-off absences. It's not intended to be the assignment for an individual serving in a longer term capacity. We have documents for that.
Does it also, I can't remember, does it also incorporate the 20-day special education substitute?
There is a specific section of statute that limits any substitute permit holder from serving for more than 20 cumulative days in a special education classroom. So that is statutorily required. So the career substitute and the 30-day substitute may not serve for more than 20 cumulative days in a special education classroom specifically.
The classroom.
Yes. Commissioner Davis, did you still have your hand up?
I just as a point of, I don't know if it's the border, but the idea that you and our chair represent our voices, this conversation to continue virtually often, as much as it needs to, so that you all don't keep reminding us that it's not an action item. I get that, but if you don't know how to represent us, then how are you representing us? So
the conversation is completely within order. Right.
I'm not saying that anything's out of order, except we keep getting reminders that, well, this is an information item, and I understand that. I think we all know.
I don't mean to say that as a way to cut you off, and I just cut you off, so I apologize. But I think what I'm learning from this is that, and I wanted to point out that when I asked to confer with Mary, that's an example of what we do in between commission meetings as a result of what we've heard from public comment, what we're hearing from around here, because this was just an information item, but it led to a very rich conversation about what's really happening in classrooms. So I want to be really clear that it's not my intention as chair to curtail that conversation, but to keep us moving, because I'm looking at closed session. So that's the other piece that I'm balancing, and I'm not chairing smart body.
Your insight is important, and I was not trying to curtail.
With all due respect, may I finish what I was starting to say before I was interrupted?
Please do.
Thank you. So what I was going to say about this also is piggybacking on what Commissioner Delatorre said about the mental health needs of our students. That consistency factor is a big deal. So having a consistent person there is a primary consideration that should be made. The other thing secondarily is our governor keeps granting an extension of that 30-day credential to extend to 60 days. And I'm not sure if this is a reflection of I believe it's been 2 times that this has happened, where there's been an extension. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, so during COVID,
Yeah.
the governor did extend it, but the extension, it lapsed last year.
Okay. So,
124.
so then this would.
This would put into statute permanently.
Right.
I can't remember if the current version of the bill has a sunset clause or not.
I just
The
wanted
60 day,
to-
yeah.
to just throw that factor out there that, this is not a new thing. This is something that keeps kind of reoccurring in the past few years, and wanted to just throw that in the conversation.
Actually, I'm glad the question came up and Erin, you came to the table because I have a question actually to clarify something. So I'm thinking in many high schools that have block scheduling where they're alternating days, with the 60 days, is it in the room or is it with those students? So for example, I only meet with my students every other day. So if I had a sub for 60 days, is it really 120 because they only meet with those students every other day? So then we're really extending in that situation to 120 days?
120 instructional days.
So that to me is a little concerning. I get the consistency, but I'm thinking, let's say there's a physics classroom and I am with my English degree and my fingerprints now teaching a physics class. That's the better part of a semester, or a high school that's on a traditional 4x4. You're condensing a year-long class into a semester. So you're essentially losing your entire year of whatever that subject is. That's a long time. And so I totally understand that the continuity for the mental health reasons. I also, especially I think at the secondary level, have concerns about content. That those students may not have access to content. So I have a concern with that. And I see we have more people that Jeanette, did you have your hand up before?
Did, but I don't want to jump in front of anybody that.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, since we have staff at the table,
Yes.
are you okay?
Yes.
All right.
I appreciate this robust discussion. I just wanted to add one thing. I usually try to stay at the side table, but I wanted to just add one more consideration, which is as this issue has evolved, the question is not about whether a substitute should be able to be in a classroom with a student for 6 days. It's whether that substitute should have any additional training whatsoever. I mean that specifically, any additional training whatsoever in exchange for being in that classroom for 1/3 of an academic year. That's the question. So more support. So the issue at the heart of this is, how do we feel? It's not about consistency of adults, right? It is about putting somebody in the classroom for 1/3 of an academic year that does not have any training and not requiring that they get any additional training. And we know, because of where our emergency permits are, which schools those are in. I think we can have a pretty good idea of which schools and which neighborhoods are going to be taking advantage of this. And we know, and the data is clear, about the effect of untrained adults in the classroom. The teacher is the single most important factor. And so the concern that has emerged is that, are we going to allow somebody in a classroom for 60 days with no additional training? No additional training for special ed students, no additional training. So sorry, I felt just kind of compelled because I don't think there's nobody that is against consistency for students. That is not at the heart of the issue of this bill. The issue is, are we going to not just lower, are we going to eliminate standards for this? And are we okay with that? This was done during COVID. And what you're looking at is locking in learning loss, right? And then the other thing is, when you look at other states, this is a slippery slope. This is a slippery slope to a lowering of standards. I just wanted to offer that, and thank you for listening. Sure.
Commissioner Brown, I think was next.
I felt like you tiptoed a little bit into what I wanted to share. I think for me, Thank you for coming to the table and explaining that there are currently options available to be the substitute teacher for 60 days or more, should the need exist. So that was helpful for me. And I do want to connect that with conversations we've had in the past, even just at this meeting, about teachers, whether they are, no matter what flavor credential they hold, getting adequate support. You know, we've talked a lot about what does support look like for the TPA? What does support look like for this? And I think that we have affirmed many times that we want practitioners to have the support that they need. And so for me, it's exactly about what you just shared, about there are currently options that exist for 60 days or longer, coupled with support. Because we all know, and we've talked many times about, being a teacher in a classroom is hard. And if you don't have the support you need, because if you're there for 60 days or longer, you may have to do parent conferences, you may have to do report cards, you may have to do other things that a day-to-day sub may not have to encounter. And so I would want that person, whoever it is, or however long they're in that position, to have the support that they need to be successful, no matter what the ask entails. And I do agree that continuity for children is super important. I feel more comfortable knowing that those options do currently exist, coupled with that support. I think that's key for me.
Just a comment about something, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Ibrahim, and Mr. Howard. Maybe you can clarify this. Would this, as written, would it supersede what we just spoke of about the 20-day proviso for special education classes? Or would that extend time for them, or does that just supersede that? I'm confused now.
My understanding is that it would supersede that, so it would negate that section of statute for special education. And this has been good discussion, so thank you, everybody. And thank you, Commissioner De La Torre, because I think your comment kind of triggered all of this discussion, which was good discussion. So thank you. Any other questions? And thank you, staff, for all the important clarifications as well. Then again, this was an information item. No action is necessary. So having no additional items today, I adjourn the legislative.
Next is the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. Commissioner Jeanette Brown will serve as the acting committee chair due to Commissioner Cruz's absence. Commissioner Brown, will you please convene the committee?
Yes. I now convene the meeting of the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. The committee has one item before it today. That's item 5A. Item 5A is an update on the governor's proposed 2025-26 budget. It is an information item. Sarah Saley will present this item. Ms. Saley, will you please begin?
Hello, members of the commission. My name is Sarah Saley, and I'm the Fiscal and Business Services Manager here at the commission. So Governor Newsom presented his updated proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26 on May 14th, 2025. And the May revision proposes approximately 40.4 million and 207.9 positions for the commission. And that represents an increase from the governor's budget in the amount of 2.3 million and 7 new positions. And the commission's proposals include the following. So 200,000 in fiscal year 25-26 and ongoing to align the state operational costs with the commission's current staffing levels. To support the workload in the professional services division relating to updating and adding a non-teaching pathway for the administrative services credential, which was outlined in the governor's veto message to Assembly Bill 2725. The commission will receive 455,000 in fiscal year 25-26. And of that 455,000, 133,000 is available on a one-time basis to convene a temporary work group. And the 322,000 will be available for 2 positions for the work. In fiscal year 26-27 and ongoing, 322,000 will be provided to support the ongoing position. Next, to support the increased legal services costs as it relates to the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of Administrative Hearings, the commission will receive $800,000 in fiscal year 25-26 and ongoing. And lastly, to support the IT section with various workload issues, the commission will receive $890,000 in fiscal year 25-26 and $880,000 ongoing to support 5 positions. Now onto trailer bill. So these are items that are in trailer bill that was amended on June 24th, 2025. The governor has not yet signed any of these, and it proposes the following. So beginning July 1, 2027, the commission will be responsible for the National Board for Professional Teaching Standard Certification Incentive Program that is currently under the administration of the State Department of Education. The commission currently implements the Reading and Literacy Supplementary Grant Program to support credentialed teachers to earn a supplementary authorization in reading and literacy. The bill is proposing to revise and recast the program to rename it as the Mathematics Instructional Added Authorization and Reading and Literacy Supplementary Authorization Incentive Program. It would extend the funding availability through June 30th, 2030. Next up, the commission will implement the Student Teacher Stipend Program to support prospective educators during their completion of 500 or more hours of student teaching as part of their credential program's clinical practice. The local educational agency would provide stipends of $10,000 to be paid during the school year in which the credential candidate is completing their student teaching. And the bill would appropriate $300 million in total, of which $5 million is set aside for Kern County to conduct a multimedia campaign and a grants management system for the commission. And in fiscal year 25-26, the commission will receive $70 million from the general fund to augment the teacher residency grant program. And once the governor signs the budget and any corresponding trailer bills, the commission will integrate new programs and priorities into our operational plan.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comment?
There are no public comments.
One second. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item?
You talked about the grant programs. This is very, very helpful to hear more about. Do we have any updates on residency grants? Golden State Teacher Grant would be from CTC, but do you have any updates on publications?
So I think that the one, the piece that is coming to the commission, the residency piece that you just asked about, we are getting an additional appropriation for that. The Golden State Teacher Grant stays with the CSAC, but I don't know whether they have, whether they're getting an increase in appropriation or not.
And residencies, do we have a dollar amount that's been determined?
Yes, we do. 70 million additional funds.
Classified? Is that
classified? No.
The national board submitted recommendations are coming to CTC. So, and so is that no longer going to be administered by the CDC?
It is currently administered by CDE, and beginning July 1, 2027, they would then transfer it to us. And so the commission would then be administering the program.
And so it's going to be CTC staff that will be administering? And do you know what the budget will be? So is the budget being transferred also to the CTC?
Will. I think there was a transfer, depends on how much is left, but I believe it was 300 million.
And it being 2027, that's 2 years from now.
2027.
So not sure exactly what the resource base will be, but the program administration will be moving. here.
That's for cycle 2020s through 2031, right? Cycle two.
I believe that's true. We certainly can provide more detail on this. I mean, this is really, the ink is not dry on the budget yet, so, nor has it completely been finalized. So, I think it might be good for us to just make something confirmatory to your August meeting to let you know how it all really does settle out. And we'll know more by then.
Okay. But will we still have Dr. Olson or no?
Dr. Olson, who administers. I'm seeing Adam come to the table. He may have some insight.
Dr. Olson is staff with CDE, so when it transfers over to the CTC, then it would be under the management of the CTC. We are in contact already with Dr. Olson, and so there would be a transition.
Do we know who would be in charge of it with the CTC?
2 years out, it's still dry, not dry. So we're lots to determine.
Thank you.
Do any other commissioners have questions, comment? All right, this is an information item and no action is needed. Thank you, Ms. Saley. And this concludes the business before the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. Meeting is adjourned.
Brown. I'd like us to move to agenda item 2H, Indian recommendations for the public member positions on the Committee of Credentials. The ad hoc committee recommends to the full commission the appointment of Gian Lai, Anna Osipova, to serve in the public member positions on the Committee of Credentials. The committee also recommends Rachel Hayes be appointed as a public member alternate. We are now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public? The public comment period for this item is now closed. Would members of the ad hoc committee like to speak about their recommendations? Looking at.
I would just like to say that my appreciation for advancing 3 very qualified candidates for the position. I think they all represent they would all make unique contributions to the committee. And I also think that they would learn a lot more. I mean, all of them expressed, even as they had so much knowledge, they expressed this wanting to know more and become very involved. And it's really encouraging to me that there are folks out there still who are volunteering so much of their time and expertise to making sure that schools are safe place for young people where they can thrive and be under the care and guidance of very highly qualified educators. So I look forward to their participation in their new roles. And I want to thank Commissioner Cardenas and Commissioner Mancia for joining our merry band of interviewees that selected these young people. Although young people.
Do either commissioner. Other Commissioner Cardenas and Macias, would you like to?
I'm going to echo the comments by Commissioner Francois. The idea that we had very qualified candidates willing to serve. Staff also pointed out that there was a need. You know, that it's important to have people on the committee. There were 2 open spots, and the ability to have to fill both of those spots and have an alternate really help us do the work that needs to be done. The amount of work that the committee does is impressive, and the idea that we have people of any age who are willing to commit to it and help our shared mission is something that I'm excited about. The committee as well, they answered really thoughtfully written questions, and I think that their shared commitment to student safety and supporting teachers will serve them well.
One thing I like to add is we just all bring unique perspectives and strengths that I think are only going to contribute to the Committee on Credentials. And I'm just very happy to have them on board and to be doing this work alongside with us. Thank you to both commissioners for leading the charge on this interview.
Thank you all. Do we have a motion to approve the recommendations of the ad hoc committee? It's,
So moved.
Commissioner Mancias, is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? Will the recording secretary please call for the vote? Each member please respond with aye, nay, or.
Jeanette Brown. Aye. Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael De La Torre.
Aye.
Marcelo Shire. Aye. Bonnie Clapp.
Aye.
Ira Lett.
Aye. Aye.
Ruben Mencias.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 2I is new business. The bi-monthly agenda is presented for information. Next on the agenda is audience presentations. Please notify the meeting moderator by submitting card or clicking on the raise hand icon, participating through Zoom or pressing *9. Recording secretary, are there any audience presentations? No presentations. I will now recess the general session. Members of the commission will go into closed session. The general session will reconvene after the session. Commissioners, can we take 45 minutes for lunch and be back at 1? Like to reconvene the general session and move to agenda item 2J, report of closed session item.
Staff, in closed session, staff briefed the commission on the case of pending litigation, confidential civil rights department matter, and no reportable action was taken. The commission granted Stephen Tacey's petition for reinstatement. The commission denied the following petitions for reinstatement: Kurt Osmer, Kristen Meadows, Lee Hammond, Freedom Chiteni, and Larry Williams. Commissioner Michael De La Torre recused on this item. Commissioner Catherine Brown was appointed on June 27th, 2025 to be a voting member to hold quorum. The commission adopted the proposed decision in the matter of Anthony Martinez. Commissioner Michael De La Torre recused on this item. The commission reviewed the transcript in the following matters, and a decision and order will be prepared for the commission's adoption. The commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order for Joseph Barrera, Cyan Gonzalez, Bryant Matthews, Jacqueline Palafox, Monty Ray Rampal. Commissioner Michael De La Torre recused on this item. Heather Lynn Solomon, Martha Villarreal, and William P. Wells. The commission discussed the matter of item number 71, Cameron Shim, and remanded the matter back to the Committee of Credentials. The commission discussed the matter of item 91, Daniel Alvarez Ibarra Jr., rejected the proposed decision and called for the transcript.
Thank you. I now adjourn the June 2025 meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. The next meeting is on August 28th and 29th. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you to our amazing legal team.